Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena, where tonight the Predators, the Red Hot Predators, host the San Jose Sharks at 7 o'clock tonight. And MoneyPuck.com gives the Predators a 97.9% chance of making the playoffs with a victory in regulation today, 97.8 if they get that point in overtime. Basically, what they're telling you, the analytic gurus, Ian, what they're telling you is win tonight against the crummy San Jose Sharks, and you're going to make the playoffs.
Let's hope they're right.
How crazy is it in a month's time we've gone from, I don't know, they might have to be sellers, to win tonight against that crappy Sharks team, and you're in, baby, for the most part. It's pretty wild. Ian, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Outstanding. Okay, so I want to start on this today, and I know the Titans have signed Sebastian Joseph Day, a defensive lineman. We'll get to him as they're trying to, plug up some of these holes or whatever. But last night I sent Ian a text, or a tweet via text, when I saw that Mel Kiper Jr. was coming out with his mock draft. I was very excited. The post-free agency mock draft from Mel Kiper Jr. And Mel is one of the few guys whose mock drafts we got to pay attention to because, Mel's the guru. Daniel Jeremiah is another guy whose mock drafts we pay attention to. He's NFL Network's lead draft analyst. So when he put something out there, Daniel Jeremiah wrote this. So I was fascinated when I woke up this morning to see what Mel had for the Titans. And as I took out my phone, I saw that Daniel Jeremiah at NFL Network had come out with his mock draft. Now, I've told you guys the way I do this. Once I click a mock draft, whether the Titans are picking 7th, 18th, 23rd, 28th, it doesn't matter. As soon as I click the mock draft, I immediately, with my thumb just scroll down to see what the Titans are doing. Mel Kiper's mock draft, which did not have any trades before the Titans picked at 7, has the Titans drafting Joe Alt, the tackle out of Notre Dame. Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, and when I clicked the link for the NFL.com mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah, it said this is chaos and crazy trades and everything else, and he's not wrong. He's got 4 being traded by Arizona to Minnesota. He's got 5 being traded by the Chargers to the Jets. And Daniel Jeremiah has the Titans drafting Joe Alt with the 7th overall pick. So again, ESPN's lead draft analyst, Mel Kiper Jr., says Joe Alt at 7. NFL Network's lead draft analyst, Daniel Jeremiah, also says Joe Alt at 7. And I have to ask this question because we've all been doing this for far too long. We've all been following football. We've all been following the draft. It can't be this simple, can it? It can't be this easy. Left tackle is either the second or third most important position in the NFL. Quarterback is 1, and then wide receiver, left tackle, and pass rusher are kind of all in that group of second most important position. And we know if you're a left tackle that can play in the NFL right out of college, you are gone by the 12th pick in every draft. You're gone in good drafts by the 12th pick, and you're gone in bad drafts by the 12th pick. And Joe Alt is a perfect prospect. In fact, I can't remember the last time I saw a draft prospect that was just so perfect. Now, look, sometimes there are perfect draft prospects out there, and they end up not panning out, where I'm a little surprised that, man, this guy, I thought he was a great player. He tested well. He didn't end up being. But for the most part, when a guy's a perfect draft prospect, it's like Myles Garrett coming out of Texas A&M. Joe Alt has great size. He has great length. He tested well at the combine. And I mean tested well in the drills that mattered the most, like the 3-cone drill. He has great tape in college against high-level competition playing at Notre Dame. He's got NFL bloodlines. His dad was a starting left tackle for the Chiefs. Not one person has said anything bad about Joe Alt. There is no, one scout said that Joe Alt is hard to coach. One college coach came out and said, Joe Alt is not a team player. Nope, haven't heard any of that. And the most important thing, maybe, of all of this, he has no injury history. Joe Alt has started 34 consecutive games at Notre Dame. So here is the perfect left tackle prospect. And I know Olu Fashanu might be a good left tackle prospect, but there are holes in his game, including his baby hands. And I know that Amarius Mims out of Georgia, he may be a good prospect, but he didn't play a lot at Georgia. This is the one slam dunk prospect in terms of checking every box. And he plays left tackle, one of the most premium positions in the entire NFL. And I'm supposed to believe that it's going to be this easy that the Titans are going to be able to sit with the 7th pick. This is the 7th pick. This is not the 2nd pick. The Titans are going to be able to sit there with the 7th pick and just wait. And this unbelievable, unquestionable, checks every box left tackle prospect, the one position the Titans absolutely, positively have got to get right, is going to be available. Guys, we've been doing this too long. We've been watching the NFL for too long. We've been watching the draft for too long. It's never this easy, is it? I mean, I really am at the stage where let's take Kuiper's mock, for example. Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, Drake May 3, Marvin Harrison Jr. 4, Malik Neighbors 5, Roma Dunze 6, Joe Alt to the Titans at 7. If I'm the Titans and I'm in the war room at St. Thomas Sports Park and I see the run on the receivers after the run on the quarterbacks, as soon as I know that we're available, I might even pick up the phone and call the Giants at that point and say, hey, would you be interested in sliding back, to 7? We'll give you a pick maybe in next year's draft or something. You can still get whoever it is that you want to get, but we're taking Joe Alt. Like, we are sliding up to make sure we get our guy. But if he's available, I am calling down to New York. I'm telling the guys that are sitting there at the desk at the draft, I am telling them, if Joe Alt is available with that 7th pick, don't even worry about picking up the phone. Just go take the card in. Did I say New York? Detroit. The guys that are there in Detroit at the draft, just go turn the card in. Just go get Joe Alt. I hear all this talk about Minnesota and their lust for J.J. McCarthy, and I'm dead serious that if Minnesota called and Alt was on the table, if Alt and McCarthy were both on the table and Minnesota called and they offered 11 and they offered the other first-round pick that they acquired from the Texans, who originally acquired it from the Browns, I think I'd turn them down. Because that's how much of a pure prospect Joe Alt is. Again, that doesn't mean he's going to be Orlando Brown, or Orlando Pace, or Orlando Brown. It doesn't mean he's going to be a star. It doesn't mean that, but he literally checks every single box. And so I'm supposed to believe that there's not going to be any drama that stands between the Titans and this unbelievable prospect with that 7th pick. I know that we have over a month to go before the draft, and there will be all kinds of lies that come out. There will be all kinds of reports. I think somebody had a thread on Twitter last week that had Todd McShay's breakdown of what he was hearing before the draft. And it was things like, I'm hearing the Texans aren't interested in a quarterback. I'm hearing that Indianapolis doesn't know what they'll do if Will Levis is off the board when they pick at 4. I'm hearing everything that he heard was a lie. So we're getting to lying season. So when we hear these things, we need to remember that. But the one thing that I know is that Joe Alt is a top-level prospect. The old man told me the way they used to do it was they used to do it out of 10, and nobody got a 10. And 7 was the best of the best in terms of prospects. Eddie George, he said, was a 7. Marcus Mariota, not that he was there, but using him as an example, was a 7, and he went second overall. I think by my estimations, Joe Alt's probably a 7. And so the Titans aren't going to have to do anything, and they're going to be able to get this player because both Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah think he's going to be available. And that includes trades in Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, where he has Minnesota trading up to 4 to get J.J. McCarthy, and he has the Jets trading up to 5 to get Marvin Harrison Jr. It can't be that easy. This is the NFL. Everything's supposed to be hard. But the more we get into this, the more excited I am, especially after the Chargers dumped Keenan Allen, thus creating the absolute must-have need at wide receiver, that I think it's pretty likely the Titans are going to be able to get Joe Alt. And Joe Alt is too good of a prospect for the Titans to pass to try to pick up more picks. He's too good of a prospect for the Titans not to just say, that's our left tackle, on we go. And if I feel that way, and it sounds like they feel that way, there's no way these other teams that need left tackle, again, the second or third most important position in the NFL, there's no way they're not thinking, you know what, we got to jump the Titans. It can't be this easy. 615-737-1025, that's how we're starting at 615-737-1025. So here's the real question now. If I'm the Titans, and again, free agency for all intents and purposes is over, we know who's on the Titans, we know where the holes lie, what's the plan? We know the plan. If Alt's there at 7, take Joe Alt. But do we need to have a backup plan? We'll get to that coming up next. And, of course, your phones. 615-737-1025. Barry Trotz will join us today at 5 o'clock. So, of course, remember that. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app, and there's no better time to get rolling on the FanDuel Sportsbook app than the month of March with big basketball every single day, it feels like. From upsets to buzzer beaters, nothing compares to college basketball in March. But sometimes you're on the wrong end of those moments. That's why my friends at FanDuel are giving everyone a no-sweat bet from now until March 20th. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or if you already have an account. You'll get bonus bets back if your bet doesn't win. You can even use your no-sweat bet on a college basketball parlay. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app if you don't already have it by going to FanDuel.com/JGM and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and my official sportsbook app. 21 and over in present Tennessee. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Do you think that that it is likely that he'll be available at 7?
Who, Olu?
Oh,
It depends on what Jim Harbaugh and the Khakis do, man. What they do with the Chargers is the Chargers and Giants. That's going to be the main one. And you just got to kind of hope that, somebody either A, moves up to get McCarthy, you know what I mean, which I doubt is going to happen with the, in front of the Titans. So you look, Caleb Williams, it'll be the 3 quarterbacks, Williams, Jaden Daniels, who has now on many boards, a lot of people are finally coming to their senses. He has now risen above Drake May, but that's a different conversation. So you have those 3, and then you have Marvin Harrison Jr., and then at 5 and 6, it's like, okay, is somebody going to get Rome Odunze, or are they going to get one of these tackles? And if they get one of these tackles, are they going to get Olu, or are they going to get Joe Alt? I don't see how anybody takes Olu ahead of Alt, but, that's something that is not my decisions.
there you go. That was TD saying, look, it depends on what Jim Harbaugh and it depends on what the Giants are going to do. And I agree. I think it is obvious, quarterback. Both Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah's mock drafts, quarterback. Then at 4, I do wonder what Arizona's going to do. I think everybody's thought that it was a slam dunk that they were going to take Marvin Harrison, but then after the combine, NFL executives were, I guess, split between Alt, Harrison, and Dallas Turner for that spot with Arizona, 2 apiece, trying to say who's going to go in that spot. And there's a lot of talk that Arizona, Diana Rossini's reported, they want out of that pick. So I don't know if anybody, though, jumps to 4 in order to draft the tackle. That may seem a little rich, but the Chargers are definitely a trade candidate at 5, and the Giants are not definitely a trade candidate at 6, but the Giants could do anything here. The Giants could take a receiver. They need one. The Giants could take a quarterback if J.J. McCarthy is available because, as Rich Eisen said after the combine, he kept hearing buyer's remorse as far as the Giants were concerned with Daniel Jones. They could take a tackle. They could take Joe Alt and kick Evan Neal, who they drafted in the first round a couple of years ago, inside the guard because he kind of sucks at tackle. So the Giants at 6 are an ultimate wild card, and they could trade out. But if he's there, you're making that pick. The question that I have now is, okay, we're the Titans. Brand Carthon, Brian Callahan, whomever. Chad Brinker and his curing cancel AI model. What's the backup plan if Joe Alt goes off the board? And the only thing I can think about here, and this is what makes the draft so difficult in terms of the evaluation. This is why everything has to be so thorough. Information has to be so locked down, so that you don't end up in a situation last year where your pants get pulled down on national TV and you get stuck drafting a guard with the 11th overall pick. The way I view it is this. If Joe Alt is not available at 7, which, again, if you tell me right now Joe Alt won't be there, I'll feel better about it than getting my hopes up that Joe Alt could be there only to have Joe Alt go off the board like something crazy. The Jets jump you to get to 5 and they take him. But if he's not there, then that means that 2 of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, and J.J. McCarthy are available. 2 of those guys are available. In the case of McCarthy, he represents a humongous trade opportunity because there are a lot of teams sitting in the teens, starting with the Vikings at 11, which is technically not a teen, neither is 12, but at 11, 12, 13, 15, that could use quarterbacks. Now, if Williams, Daniels, or May are available there with the 7th pick, then we have to have a long conversation. Because I hate to say this, but if Drake May is sitting there with the 7th overall pick, we may have to have a conversation on, do you take Drake May and turn around and deal Will Levis to one of these teams like the Broncos or the Vikings or whomever that doesn't end up getting Drake May? Tim Hasselbeck came on our midday show last week, and he said that he thinks that it's all bull crap, this talk about Drake May falling in the draft, This talk about people wanting J.J. McCarthy over Drake May, he says it's totally fugazi and that he's been around Drake May and he's called Drake May's games, and he thinks it's nuts. So he thinks that May's going to go. But again, we got to have the conversation. If May's there at 7, do you take him? I think you do. But that's a different discussion for a different day. And it is a discussion that we will have on this program at some point. If it's Marvin Harrison who's available, do you take him or do you trade the pick? Now, I'm not the biggest Marvin Harrison Jr. fan in the world. Everybody else is. But I also recognize the level of prospect that Marvin Harrison Jr. is, and that is a high-level prospect at wide receiver that can do very different things, and thus the Titans could take him, and now with DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Marvin Harrison, Will Levis is going to have options to throw the football. Most people would say take Harrison, but then what is the value of Harrison to everybody else? Same question. If it's Neighbors, do you take him or do you trade the pick? If it's Odunze, do you take him or do you trade the pick? Even if it means going back to 9 with Chicago, because I think Chicago would like to have Rome Odunze to go with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. If you were able to make that move and pick up a second-round draft choice, which the chart says that the difference between 9 and 7 is a 3, I would argue, I want a little bit more than the chart, and I can pick up a second-round draft choice in exchange for doing that. I mean, I'd feel pretty good about still being able to get Olu Fashanu. So all of these things are on the table, but they're all backup plans. Because the only thing that matters to me right now is all of this and all the time, and we will dedicate all of this over the next month and a half. But the only thing that matters to me is that this is just in case Joe Alt's not there. Because if Joe Alt's there, you take him. If Mel's mock is right, and Alt's available at 7, you take him. If Jeremiah's mock is right, and in spite of the fact that Minnesota trades with Arizona to get J.J. McCarthy, and that the Jets trade with the Chargers in order to get Marvin Harrison Jr., and Alt's still there at 7, you take him. This is the easiest part of the discussion. I think the hard part of the discussion is if the two players that are there, let's say it goes the way that I think a lot of us may envision it, right? Where it's Williams, Daniels, May, Harrison, Neighbors, Odunze. That's Mel's mock, and I don't disagree with it. Let's say that that's how it goes. So now Alt is by far the top guy on the board, but there's also J.J. McCarthy, and there's also all these teams that want to trade for J.J. McCarthy. I don't think I think I tell Minnesota and I tell Denver and I tell everybody, like, sorry, guys, but I'm taking Joe Alt. The only question I have, that's the easy thing, is to decide what to do if he's there at 7. The question is, what do you do if he's not there at 7? And then I think the second question is, you know what? We'll get to the second question. So the first question is, what do you do if he's not there at 7? If the Chargers say we're taking him anyways, we don't have any wide receivers, we already have a left tackle, we're taking him. Well, now the question is, the next question is, what if you start to catch wind that somebody's going to jump you? Then what do you do? 615-737-1025, we're to your phones. And there's one thing coming up next that on the alt front, I just can't not believe. As much as I want these mocks to be right, that Alt will be there at 7, there's just something that I heard that I just cannot believe this. We'll do that next. Here on Stillman and Company. By the way, Kayvon Wallace has signed a 1-year deal with the Seattle Seahawks. So a lot of people like the job that Kayvon Wallace did after the Titans signed him off the street last year and put him at safety and said, just bring him back. Well, that's not an option because he's now with the Seattle Seahawks. And now we're starting to see guys fly off the board probably for around the league minimum. And you still got holes to fill probably for around the league minimum. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. I promise you, they can do the exact same for you. This month is Happy's Golden Ticket Sweepstakes here at Hiller. Enter to win at HillerGoldenTicket.com. All you have to do is enter your email and you're automatically entered to win. Prizes include a $5,000 Hiller gift card, a $1,000 Hiller gift card, or 1 of 10 Happy Hiller Club memberships. Or take advantage of zero interest financing for 12 months on select new HVAC systems, tankless water heaters, and whole home generators. Do not miss out. Enter to win right now at HillerGoldenTicket.com. And I know that having a Happy Hiller Club membership is worth it because I got one. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, my friends and also proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today.
Joe Alt, if people remember, he's the son of John Alt, the offensive tackle that used to play for the Kansas City Chiefs in the 90s, one of the best offensive lines in the game at the time. He's a monster, right? 6'9", 321. I think as far as being ready for the NFL, you're probably not going to pick a tackle better than him at this point.
I mean, again, great program, great father, been around it since the day he was born. Obviously a very good athlete. 4'6'9". There are certain scouts out there that don't want to say for a 6'9" guy. The reality is he's 6'9", moving the way that he does, light enough on his feet. He can move. Of course, he ran a good time. It's not all about that, though. As you mentioned, Jeff Schwartz mentioned, 7.31 3-cone. 3-cones are another big indicator. And I was a 3-cone guy, remember, for many, many years. 3-cones are a really big indicator of that body control and that movement. That a man like this big, those are really good numbers at 321. Smart guy. I mean, a guy that you can build your team around. It's why he is a pillar player, right? He's not only a pillar position, but a guy that you're going to be proud of of having as your pillar offensive tackle moving into many years.
That was Thomas Dimitrov, the former Falcons general manager, the CEO of Sumer Sports on the Sumer Sports Draft Show. And when I just heard Thomas saying it like that, like, hey, this guy is rock solid. He's got the championship bloodlines. He's got, comes from a great program. He's a great player. He's got great size. He's got great 3-cone. And he is a pillar player. What he's telling you is this is a franchise player here in Joe Alt. And so when I see the mock drafts come out, I see Mel Kiper Jr. saying that, well, okay, it'll be Caleb Williams at number 1. Don't have a problem with that. Jaden Daniels at number 2. Again, quarterbacks get pushed up. Now, I would go May over Daniels, but I haven't studied it enough to, really put my foot down on that. But, okay, Daniels 2, May 3, fine. Marvin Harrison 4, makes sense. I love neighbors. He goes 5. Am I really supposed to believe that a franchise pillar player at a position like left tackle is going to be available with the 7th overall draft pick? Am I really? Like, I have such a hard time on that, and I am scared to death. When we talk about, all right, what's the backup plan if the Chargers take him at 5? Or what's the backup plan if the Giants decide to take him? Or one thing that I would wonder, if you're the Titans, is there anybody behind you that is going to want to jump you in order to take Alt and is going to be willing to do it? The Jets, I think, were a prime candidate picking at 10, when this all began, but they just signed Tyron Smith to a contract. Now, Tyron Smith would not stop me from drafting Joe Alt. But the Jets are stupid, and I could see Aaron Rodgers, throwing a fit with all these wide receivers when they've already got a left tackle, even though he's a 33-year-old left tackle that never stays healthy. They got a left tackle, they got a right tackle. So I'd have a hard time seeing the Jets do that. I don't think Chicago would do that, even though I looked up their left tackle the other day, and it was a nobody, but I guess he plays left tackle. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm prepared for everything because this is the NFL draft. Somebody texted me and said, how often are Mel's mocks right? It's a fair point. But again, this is everybody telling us, Kiper and Jeremiah, that Alt's going to be there at 7. I mean, I told you guys this on Friday. I opened the show with this on Friday. When I saw Keenan Allen get traded to the Bears, knowing that the Chargers had no wide receivers. Their wide receiver room is Quentin Johnston, who looks like a bust, that they took in the first round last year, and Josh Palmer, who's good, but I don't think any of us consider Josh Palmer a starting wide receiver, the caliber of a Keenan Allen or Roma Dunze. I celebrated when that happened because I'm like, they have to go receiver at 5. In fact, I thought that was the Chargers' way of telling you, yeah, we're going receiver at 5, and we don't care. Like, 3 quarterbacks are going to go, and that means that Harrison or Neighbors will be there, and we're going to take one of those 2. And I really think there's a chance that, again, that pillar player, Thomas Dimitrov's like, this is a pillar player. You build your franchise around this guy. That he'll be there at 7. My head thinks it's really likely. My heart is very skeptical. It's like the heart of a UT basketball fan right now. You know you have a good team. You know you have a good draw, but you know Rick Barnes in the month of March. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, that number is 615-737-1025. One texter says, say the Titans sign Andrus Peat as Joe Alt insurance and Alt is gone when the Titans pick. Would you trade back and get one of the right tackles like Fuaga and let Andrus Peat play left tackle? You know, I don't think that's a discussion worth having today because Andrus Peat did not sign a contract yesterday when he visited the Tennessee Titans, and that makes me think that Andrus Peat is not going to sign a contract with the Tennessee Titans. And I have to tell you, I'm getting a little worried about all the holes the Titans have and the players the Titans have visiting. And look, I get it. I don't want to hammer the Titans. If Jerome Baker came in for a visit, they ran the medicals, and the medical said, don't sign Jerome Baker. I don't want to hammer the Titans for that because if the medicals say don't take the guy, and you take the guy and then he gets hurt, it doesn't matter that you took the guy in March because here you are in October and you still don't have an inside backer because he's hurt. But there's a lot of guys at positions that matter that are coming in here visiting the Titans that I'd like to see signed, like Andrus Peat, like Marcus May, the safety. And they're a little slow on some of these signings. Now, I do wonder if one of the reasons they've been slow on these signings is because of the L'Jarius Sneed situation. And the fact that it does sound like the Titans are, it sounds like the Titans are negotiating with L'Jarius Sneed and that L'Jarius Sneed just wants too much money. But I could be wrong. Cameron says, if Drake May is available at 7, the Titans have to take him, period. Passing on a potential star quarterback because you already have a guy gets people fired every year. I mean, yes and no, right? Like, Levis might be a star quarterback too. The question then becomes, with your quarterback guru coach, which guy do you prefer? May for 5 years or Levis for 3 years? Because that is the decision you're making. And the pick, if you were to call up Denver or Minnesota or any of these quarterback-needy teams, and you were to offer them the pick to be able to draft Drake May, would probably start at 2 number 1s. If you call them after you draft Drake May and you offer them up Will Levis, they might give you a second rounder, and that's just to keep you from giving it to somebody else. But one of those teams is probably taking McCarthy, so there may not be as much of an appetite there. And the league has already told us they don't like Will Levis. Because if they had liked Will Levis, they would have drafted Will Levis. So, we got to keep that in mind. One texter into the text line says, Andrus Peat played over 700 snaps at left tackle last year and gave up 2 sacks. It angers me that the Titans wouldn't give him $7 million a year. That comes from Kyle. I don't know that. I don't know that the Titans wouldn't give him $7 million. I don't know what Pete's looking for, and I don't know what the Titans offered or if the Titans did offer. I have no idea. I was just told that when Pete came on the visit, that Pete wanted to be here with the understanding that he would probably be a swing tackle, but that the Titans were going to have to pay some real money now. It wasn't going to be some bull crap offer. It wasn't going to be some lowball veteran minimum BS. I mean, he wanted some real money. That's all I know. I don't know how it went. I don't know if the Titans made an offer. If the Titans made an offer, I don't know what the offer was. I don't know on any of that. One texter said, Paul Kaharski says that the Titans are not in on L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, there's so much reporting on this stuff. Matt Verderam is a head writer for Sports Illustrated. He's based out of Kansas City. He says the Titans are in on L'Jarius Sneed. Now, I know, again, Paul's probably talking to the Titans, who are saying they're not in on Sneed. Verderam in Kansas City, he's probably talking to the Chiefs, and maybe the Titans are being used so that they can try to get a decent deal done with Sneed and the Colts, but I don't know, there's a lot of smoke on this. One texter says, is there a chance Caleb Farley gets any playing time and can be relied on? There is no chance that he can be relied on. Maybe there's a chance he gets playing time. I wouldn't bet on it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We got more of your phones. Plus, Plus, there is another little element. The Titans did make a signing yesterday. And what we make of that signing and where it leaves them, we'll do that next. Stillman and Company. Again, we are live today at Bridgestone Arena here, as we almost always are on a game day where the Predators are taking on the Sharks tonight at 7 o'clock. Money Puck says that they have a 97.9% chance if they win. Hey, tune into 94.9 The Fan today as Vanderbilt baseball takes on Belmont at First Horizon Park. Pregame is at 5:45. First pitch is at 6, and coverage is also available on 94.9 The Fan's app and at 94.9thefan.com. And tomorrow night, Vandy women's basketball. Congratulations to them, by the way, as they take on Columbia in the women's NCAA tournament in the play-in. Pre-game at 7:45, tip-off at 8. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. Hey, sign up and play the 1025 The Game Bracket Challenge for your chance to win great prizes, including 4-day passes to Bonnaroo. The teams have been selected, so go to theGameNashville.com/bracket challenge and fill out your bracket to compete. The 1025 The Game Bracket Challenge brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket. So the Titans did sign Sebastian Joseph Day yesterday. Apparently, he was with the 49ers. I had no idea of that. I remember him from the Chargers. He was released last year, waived by the Chargers at the end of the season, picked up by the 49ers for depth on their defensive line. He did not have a very good Pro Football Focus grade at 60, but I don't care about that. The reality is Sebastian Joseph Day is a 310-pound big old boy you can put on the defensive line, which they desperately need. He's got 758 snaps over the center as a nose tackle and 1,300 snaps over the guard, kind of as your typical DB or DT. He averages about 3 sacks a year. That's good. They needed that. That is essentially the replacement for Tier Tart, which they needed. The problem is they still have holes at left tackle, right guard, right tackle, defensive end, inside linebacker, corner, and safety. And this is not a replacement for Danico Autry. And one thing I'm worried about that I feel like the Titans are doing, if you want to move on from Danico Autry, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. Danico was a very, very good player. I appreciated Danico Autry. I always thought that he was underappreciated when he was in Indianapolis. I felt like he was underappreciated at times when he was here. But I think we can all agree Danico Autry was a good player. But I understand. He was in his 30s, and he's not getting any younger, and he needs days off of practice, and fine. But you got to replace Danico Autry. You cannot let Danico Autry's 10 sacks walk out the door, draft somebody in the 4th round, and say, that's our replacement for Danico Autry. You can't do that. And unfortunately, I feel like that's what's going to happen. And it reminds me of when the Titans let Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith walk, and they didn't really do anything to replace those guys. Now, they ultimately did by adding Julio Jones, but Julio was broken down and whatever. They didn't replace Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith had something like 8 touchdowns. It was a huge part of the offense. And they just let him walk, and instead of getting another tight end, they were like, nope, Anthony Ferkser can do it. And I was like, he's not a starter. He's a backup. And so a guy like Danico leaves. Look, I get it, not the end of the world. But you got to do something when it comes to Danico Autry. And this is not replacing Danico. But at least it is a warm body that has played in the NFL, has started in the NFL, and can continue to play in the NFL. Let's go to Tristan, who's been waiting and is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Tristan.
Hey, yes. I think, if Drake May is there, I would not draft him. J.J. McCarthy is a much better quarterback than Drake May, and, I would trade down if I was the Titans, because you can pick up some more picks, but I think Minnesota may get J.J. McCarthy. He's a better quarterback than Drake May, or Chicago Bears may get J.J. McCarthy because J.J. McCarthy is from Illinois, and
the Chicago Bears are not getting J.J. McCarthy, Tristan. They're going to draft Caleb Williams. Now, here's what I'll say on the whole McCarthy, May thing, whatever. I am not, thank you, Tristan, I am not a J.J. McCarthy fan. Now, I have not studied it the way that I studied it last year. Last year I knew the quarterbacks because the Titans were interested in the quarterbacks. And I told you guys that I fell in love just off the top of my head when it came to Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. I was like, well, Will Levis didn't win Richardson. I loved everything about Anthony Richardson after I started watching the tape. And then I watched all 3 of them play Georgia. Levis, Richardson, and Hendon Hooker. And I thought that I was going to walk away from that. Kentucky only scored 6 points. I thought I was going to walk away from that down on Levis, but when I watched it, I actually was more impressed when it came to Will Levis. Long story short, I haven't done enough research on these quarterbacks because the Titans probably aren't drafting one of these guys. I haven't done enough research to tell you that I truly don't like J.J. McCarthy because I haven't watched J.J. McCarthy play enough. So maybe if I watch J.J. McCarthy's tape where I'm only watching him and I'm not watching everything else, maybe I will like him. That being said, the J.J. McCarthy hype, I think, is real. I think that there are teams that really like him. I don't think he's going to go ahead of Drake May. I think Drake May is going to go with the number 3 picked in New England. But I do think teams like McCarthy, and I could see Minnesota trying to figure out where they have to go in order to get J.J. McCarthy. Ben says, as long as the Titans don't sit on all this remaining money and miss on most of the draft picks, they can't fail the offseason, at least not until we see the product on the field, and then use hindsight to be disappointed. So I don't know what we're talking about with all this remaining money. I mean, I think the Titans have spent a fortune so far this offseason. I'm not disappointed with the money they've spent. I am disappointed with the holes that they still have as guys are flying off the board. Like, I mean, you got to have an inside backer. They don't have a green dot inside linebacker. That I have a problem with. The total money they've spent, I mean, what are we talking about? Sitting on all this money. They spent something like $90 million in terms of first-year cash. We went over it last week, did we not? And it was like $77 million in first-year cash. Plus, they just signed Sebastian Joseph Day. So I'm going to guess that's probably like another $2 million. So now we're talking about $79 million. And Rand said we can't spend all the $90 million. Was that the dollars he was talking about? That I don't know. But I think the Titans are doing a decent job of spending the money. But they still have too many holes. And I don't want to hear this bull crap about you can't fill all your holes in 1 year. Yeah, you can. You can fill them. What you can't do is you can't fill them with great players. But you can fill them with average players. And Sebastian Joseph Day is an example of the kind of guy you can get. One texter said, Autry's intangibles are irreplaceable and the 2020 defense will repeat itself. I wouldn't say that they're irreplaceable. I would just say that that's 10 sacks that walked out the door from a guy who plays pretty much every week and is a really, really good player. And let's not forget, the Titans were 7-3 in 2022 when Danico Autry got hurt for most of the remainder of the season and they didn't win a game the rest of the year. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025 here on the program. So Derrick Henry did a sit-down with Adam Schefter. And Derrick Henry told a story that has me very worried about the thought process of the front office here. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Bridgestone Arena Predators tonight against the San Jose Sharks, 7 o'clock. Barry Trotz at 5 o'clock. So Derrick Henry went on the Adam Schefter podcast. And he was asked a whole bunch of questions, and it was really a whole bunch of nothing. You know, it's Derrick. And plus, Adam Schefter is just trying to be cool on his podcast, or whatever. But there was one thing that Derrick Henry talked about that got me worried. And I want to start by saying this. I love draft picks. In fact, I remember the day of the 2017 draft when the Titans held that 5th overall pick, which ultimately ended up being Corey Davis. And I was begging for the Titans to trade that pick. Get more picks in return, get more bites at the apple, get more cracks at it. But at the end of the day, the reason that you get picks are for players. Sashi Brown, who's now the president of the Ravens, but not in a football capacity, was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. And they got pick after pick after pick after pick. They didn't draft anybody good. They traded down out of number 2 in order to give Carson Wentz to Philadelphia. They traded down from number 8 to give you Jack Conklin, and they ended up drafting Corey Coleman. Who? Exactly. So this isn't about hoarders and adding as many draft picks as you'd like. It's about deciding what it is your team needs in order to be successful on the football field. Which takes me to Derrick Henry. After signing with the Ravens, it is somewhat known, although now it's official, that the Ravens were the team trying to trade for Derrick Henry at the trade deadline. Here's what he told Adam Schefter.
You are aware of the fact that you almost were a Baltimore Raven during the season this past year, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
What do you know about that? Because I remember waiting for that trade to get done. There have been talks between the two sides, and it sounded like Tennessee decided to pull back from the talks for whatever reason and not go forward with a deal. But Baltimore had interest in acquiring you during the season this past year. What do you know about that, Derrick?
Yeah, when that process was going on around the trade deadline, I just kept seeing stuff on the internet. People were texting me, asking me questions, what's going on, which I didn't have the whole information, but just talking to my agent Todd and trying to figure out, what was going on and what I had to look forward to as far as like the whole process. If it was going to happen, if it was not going to happen. I knew there were talks. I knew that I felt like progress was being made, but at the same time, I haven't really talked to nobody in the organization about anything. So, I want to do that, to have clarification on what could possibly happen and, what their vision was like of what they wanted to do and what it looked like, and had conversations that went down, which I appreciated, being able to communicate with the higher ups in the Titans organization. And, it didn't go through. But, during the whole process, it felt like I was going to be a Baltimore Raven, but at the end, they decided not to.
Okay. Basically, Derrick Henry said, I heard a bunch of rumors. I talked to my agent. My agent heard the same rumors, but nobody from the Titans was talking to me. That I don't necessarily like, but again, can't always do business with the players right then and there. But then it took me back to a Mike Florio report that came out at the end of last year, in the middle of last year, at some point. I want to say this was November of last year, in which he basically said that Mike Vrabel's the one who put his foot down on DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry.
Earlier this year, before the trade deadline, when there was talk about maybe moving a Derrick Henry or DeAndre Hopkins, Vrabel didn't want to have anything to do with a rebuild or a reset.
Okay, so Vrabel was the one who put his foot down, saying we're not trading Derrick Henry and we're not trading DeAndre Hopkins. My guess is Vrabel probably didn't want to trade Kevin Byard either, but probably couldn't win them all, so it was relent on this and give on that. And that makes me really, really nervous. That makes me really nervous about how Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker are trying to build this football team. Because when I see that Derrick Henry, that those rumors that the Titans were shopping Derrick Henry and that Derrick, even though they said they weren't, and that Derrick Henry knew about it and that he almost went to the Ravens. And remember, right when Twitter and the blue checks started being paid for and you didn't know who's telling the truth or not, some Ravens reporter put out there, and Paul Kaharski said this didn't happen, but some Ravens reporter put out there that the Ravens and the Titans had a deal and the owner of the Titans shot it down. Well, it sounds to me like that was probably true. It sounds to me like it's probably true the Titans worked out a deal with the Ravens to send Derrick Henry to Baltimore, and Mike Vrabel said no. And when it came to DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Vrabel also said no. And a lot of you are going to hear this, and you're going to say, great job, Ran. Way to go. We won our draft picks, Jared. We didn't get anything for Derrick Henry. What are you talking about? And I just want you guys to understand how disastrous that could have been for the Titans. Even though Derrick Henry's not on the team anymore, and even though they didn't get a draft pick in exchange for Derrick Henry, it was invaluable to have Derrick Henry on the team as you broke Will Levis into the NFL. While Will Levis was quarterback, Derrick Henry had 132 carries, 7 touchdowns, and 21 targets. If you had traded away Derrick Henry, and DeAndre Hopkins, I guess, because this is part of the equation here, if you had decided we need to hoard as many draft picks as we can, we're not going to win, we're 2-4, we can't win, let's get as many draft picks as possible. If you had done that, there is a chance that Will Levis may have gotten hurt more than Will Levis got hurt this year. And by not playing in the Seattle game, the Houston game, and the Jacksonville game at the end of the year, those are real reps that Will Levis didn't get. If you take DeAndre Hopkins away from Will Levis so you can get a 4th-round draft choice or whatever it may be, he's throwing the ball at the end of the season to nobody, to Mason Kinsey. That's going to do worlds for his confidence. See, the goal of the NFL is not to acquire the most draft picks. Again, the Cleveland Browns were very successful for a very long time of hoarding draft picks. You should see the picks they got in exchange for trading Julio Jones to the Atlanta Falcons. They didn't draft one good player with them. It's about finding the franchise quarterback. But a lot of people think that it's as simple as, okay, you're a franchise quarterback, so we draft Drake May. When in reality, a lot of this is, when you draft Drake May, what can you do to make Drake May good? Now, some of this is going to be about Drake May or Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams and the talent they have, and then, of course, what's up here in the head and what's right here in the heart. But quarterback development is as much about nurture as it is nature. Probably even more. And if you had taken Derrick Henry away from Will Levis, you would have stunted his growth. If you had taken DeAndre Hopkins away from Will Levis, you would have absolutely stunted his growth. And if it's not for Mike Vrabel, those two guys probably aren't here. And they wouldn't have been here at the end of last season. And it would have been a train wreck. And your young quarterback and your young running back, who probably wasn't ready for a full load in the NFL, so much so he wasn't ready for a full load in the NFL that you just signed an $8 million running back to go with him, those guys would have been hung out to dry. So that takes me back to the people that are making these decisions. Because if it's Mike Vrabel who put his foot down, Mike Vrabel's not here anymore. So when it comes to Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, I wonder this question. What's your goal? Is your goal to build up the best football team right now for Will Levis? Because again, all that matters is if you make him the guy. Or is it to win an award for the most draft picks? It's like when Rand was talking about not spending all the money at the combine, and he was like, hey, we got to have cap space during the season. And last year, we were top 5 in space available. Woo, congratulations. How many trophies do you get for that one? That's like Russell Wilson. People saying, oh, well, hey, Russell Wilson's only cost the Steelers $1.2 million. Great. So tell me when you can hang a banner for we only paid our quarterback $1.2 million. We won 9 games, and we didn't make the playoffs, but we only paid our quarterback $1.2 million. Take that, Buffalo. You see what I'm saying? So I didn't know what to believe when it came to all the trade deadline shenanigans and everybody saying this. And, of course, remember at the time, Vrabel and Rand Carthon were telling everybody everything was great between them. They had no disagreements, right? Nah, that's probably not true. It sounds like Rand Carthon wanted to trade Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, and Mike Vrabel put his foot down. And I don't like that. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. A former All-Pro, we got some news in here. A former All-Pro is set to visit the Titans. I don't know if I necessarily want this. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stone and Company, we're live from Bridgestone Arena. This just coming in from Adam Schefter. Former Bills All-Pro corner Tre'Davious White is visiting the Rams today and is scheduled to meet later this week with the Titans and the Giants. Now, of course, the Titans do have a hole at cornerback. Even though they've signed Chidobe Awuzie, they still, and have Roger McCreary, they still need a third corner. And perhaps Tre'Davious White could be the guy that they bring in for a visit. Now, one thing that I hate is that we're using the term all-pro here when we talk about Tre'Davious White. We use this term all-pro the way that we talk about somebody who's retired from the Senate. You know, it's like, well, Senator Jackson hasn't been a senator since 1988. But whenever he comes around, Senator, good to see you. I used to work for a guy by the name of Gordon Humphrey, who used to be a senator in the state of New Hampshire. And Gordon did not like being referred to as Senator Humphrey because he felt like he wasn't a senator anymore. Well, Tre'Davious White might have at one point been an all-pro, but he's not an all-pro anymore. So what happens is all of a sudden, you know, the agents tell Adam Schefter, we're visiting the Rams today, we're visiting the Titans and the Giants, and then Adam Schefter puts out there, former all-pro Tre'Davious White, as if that's supposed to mean something to me. This guy was an all-pro in 2019. This guy was an all-pro before COVID was a thing. That's how long ago he was an all-pro. In fact, Tre'Davious White played in 4 games last year and tore his Achilles, played in 6 games the year before that, I believe having suffered an ACL tear, and played in 11 games the year before that. The guy never plays. So am I supposed to be excited about this? Here's what I would do if Tre'Davious White really wanted to visit. I'd offer him league minimum money. So that's about $1.2 million. The same $1.2 million that Russell Wilson is getting from the Steelers. And I'd offer him $1.2 million, and I'd say, we'll give you a roster spot. But that wouldn't stop me from needing to add another corner. Because, and I'm not mad at the Titans. I don't have a problem with them bringing in Tre'Davious White. I have a problem with them bringing in Tre'Davious White if they think that bringing in Tre'Davious White is the answer to filling that corner spot. Because here's what's going to happen if you bring in Tre'Davious White. Ian, what's the old saying? Dumb guys stay dumb, fat guys stay fat, and?
Injured guys stay injured.
Injured guys stay injured. Tre'Davious White's played 4 games last year, 6 games the year before that. Tre'Davious White, let's say you sign him, and that all that L'Jarius Sneed stuff is bull crap, and the Titans aren't in on Sneed, and they're not in, you know, they don't draft a corner, they sign Tre'Davious White. So we put it on paper, and we look at the defense, and we see a secondary. Now, they still have to add a safety, but we see a secondary of Chidobe Awuzie, Tre'Davious White, Roger McCreary in the slot, Amani Hooker, and whatever safety they sign. On paper, that might look pretty good. The problem is that 3 games into the season, Tre'Davious White's going to get hurt. And when Tre'Davious White gets hurt, now Trey Avery's back on the football field. And that is just not acceptable. Like, it's just not, I'm just telling you right now, it's not acceptable. Now, I relented on the Tyron Smith thing. But that's because I figured I could get 10 games or so out of Tyron Smith, and I figured he'd be good in the room if I was going to add Joe Alt and play Tyron Smith at right tackle. And, you know, I was going to offer him 7. He ended up getting 6.5 from the Jets. But even then, I didn't want to do that. Like, I didn't want to give Tyron Smith the money. You guys were just hell-bent on it, and I decided that I'd rather take my shot by giving him $7 million than putting Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, at right tackle, which I think is inevitable that they're going to put PT at right tackle, and just the idea of that makes me incredibly nervous. So I'm not mad at them for bringing in Tre'Davious White. I will be mad at them if they think that signing Tre'Davious White would be filling that need at corner. It is not. Christian Fulton is more reliable than this guy, and that is telling you something because, as we all know, Christian Fulton, probably not very reliable. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Kyle in Shelbyville says, I will take Tre'Davious White or Adoree Jackson for 1 year and let that second-round 38th pick cornerback ball out when they leave. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in Tre'Davious White, and I don't really have a lot of faith in Adoree either. Now, I like Adoree. This is one of those weird kind of scenarios, right? I like Adoree. Like, I like Adoree the guy. But I don't trust Adoree. And I know it was a different regime, but the knock on Adoree Jackson was that he wasn't really tough enough to play for Mike Vrabel. And even though Mike Vrabel got fired here, and so now you guys don't like him anymore, even though you used to kiss his ass all the time, if you're not tough enough to play for Mike Vrabel, that is a red flag. Like, I still want players to be tough. Hey, fit, Ian. I mean, we need fit players.
That's right.
And he's probably not that. Kyle says, what about Xavier? It's Xavier. What about Xavier Howard? So make of it what you will. His Pro Football Focus numbers have been horrific, like in a steady decline. And again, Pro Football Focus is not the end-all, be-all of any of this. I'm just not going to go back and watch Dolphins tape. So it's all I have to go off of. But one thing that I think has been, I got to give the Pro Football Focus people some credit here, is when Justin Simmons was on the Broncos in 2019, Justin Simmons was the baddest freaking boy I had ever seen. I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but he was awesome. And so, you know, I don't watch the Broncos consistently, but I watch them when they're on TV like everybody else does. And Simmons' name will come up here or there, and I'm like, oh, Justin Simmons, he's a good player. But I never really focused in on Justin Simmons or talked to anybody about Justin Simmons or did any research on Justin Simmons. And so when Justin Simmons got released, I was a little surprised. I was like, man, the Broncos are releasing Justin Simmons? But then when I started doing the free agency project and started going through the boards as to who would be available and who would be a good fit for the Titans, I started to notice, like, wait a minute. Kevin Byard has a significantly higher grade than Justin Simmons does. Jordan Poyer has a higher grade than Justin Simmons does. Xavier McKinney has a significantly higher grade than Justin Simmons does. And Justin Simmons, again, according to Pro Football Focus, had been on a 3-year decline. And I think there's a reason why Justin Simmons is not getting signed by any team right now, because Justin Simmons went into free agency saying, I'm Justin Simmons. And the rest of the league is saying, you ain't that Justin Simmons. You're a $5 million Justin Simmons. You're not a $10 million Justin Simmons, and you're definitely not a $14 million Justin Simmons, which is what you played at. And so when you ask me about Xavier Howard, like, Xavier Howard was a bad boy when he played for the Miami Dolphins. But Pro Football Focus says he has declined significantly. So I can't say I'm sold in on that. Now, I need to look up how many games does – the most important thing, you know what's funny is before we even get to the Pro Football Focus stuff, I always – was thinking about this earlier today. You know what the most important stat for me is with all of these guys? It doesn't matter if they're an offensive lineman. It doesn't matter if they're a kicker, if they're a wide receiver, a quarterback. Ian, do you know what the single most important statistic is to me when evaluating whether or not I want a player on the Titans?
Whether or not he plays?
Games played. Do you play? Because if you don't play, I don't care how good you are, because it's not going to do me any good if you're always hurt. Xavier Howard played 13 games last year, 15 games the year before that, 16 and 16. So that's not bad. But, again, you know, the Pro Football Focus numbers say, he ain't very good. So make of that what you will. More of your phones at 615-737-1025. Plus, we got all kinds of conflicting reporting when it comes to the Titans and L'Jarius Sneed. I will just say this, though. There is one thing that I heard about L'Jarius Sneed that would lead me to say, no thank you. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company right here live at Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
So if you guys missed it, earlier today I had a report update, just passing some information regarding L'Jarius Sneed. So there has not been a team that has made a second round or better offer for L'Jarius Sneed. All the offers that the Chiefs have received have been a third round pick. Sneed wants to become the highest paid corner in the league, and that has been the major holdup. So not that you needed me to confirm this part of it, because it's just out there now at this point. This is not a Chiefs thing. Like, this is not the Chiefs being unhappy with what the compensation has been in their conversations. It has been Sneed wants to be the highest paid corner in the league. No team wants to make Sneed the highest paid corner in the league, and we are at an impasse. So this is purely a Sneed thing and the money, not the Chiefs being unhappy with the compensation.
There you go. That's Carrington Harrison, a coworker of mine at Sirius, but he's also on 610 in Kansas City, talking about L'Jarius Sneed. Now, I am conflicted. I shouldn't say I'm conflicted. I just don't know what really to believe and what not to believe when it comes to the Titans and L'Jarius Sneed. Now, TD texted me earlier today, and he said that he's been saying for a week that the Titans are not in on Sneed. Kansas City's asking price is too high, and the Titans backed off. Then there was a report from over the weekend that got completely debunked that Indianapolis was closing in on a deal for L'Jarius Sneed, and Adam Schefter went on McAfee yesterday and chucked that guy under the bus who had reported that. And so then Matt Verderam over the weekend for Sports Illustrated said that the Titans and the Colts were both in on L'Jarius Sneed, but to Carrington Harrison's point right there, the reality was the negotiation with Sneed was too high. And so I really don't know what to believe at this point, right? So I'm trying to piece this together. About, a week and a half ago, I want to say it was maybe the day that Derrick Henry signed with the Ravens, which was last Tuesday. So 1 week ago, Buck said that the Titans were very much in play for L'Jarius Sneed. Now, nothing happened after that, but that's what he said. Now, TD is saying that he's been saying for a week that the Titans aren't in. Where was I going with that? Aren't in. They aren't in on L'Jarius Sneed. Then the one guy says that the Colts and the Titans, Matt Verderam, based out of Kansas City, says the Colts and the Titans are in on L'Jarius Sneed. And Carrington says that the Chiefs have the offer they want. The problem is L'Jarius Sneed wants to be the highest paid corner in the NFL, and that is what's scaring the teams off. And he said yesterday, nobody has offered a second-round pick. All of the offers are third-round picks or in the third-round pick range. Well, that's a problem because you don't have a third-round pick. But here's the one thing Carrington said that, again, I am skeptical of because Carrington's based out of Kansas City, and my guess is when Carrington Harrison, and I don't know Carrington very well. We work together at Mad Dog, but I don't really know him. But when he's saying, hey, the problem's not the Chiefs. The problem is Sneed wants too much money for them to be able to execute one of these trades. Ian, where do you think he's probably getting that information from?
I guess someone with the Chiefs?
Probably the Chiefs, right? Again, if the narrative is it's not the Chiefs' fault, it's his fault, it's probably coming from the Chiefs. Which takes me back to the next thing that Carrington said, which does concern me, and it would be of almost no benefit to Kansas City to let this out there unless they're trying to get Sneed to agree to a contract with them. Here's what he said.
And I will say that I didn't maybe know this and didn't view it through this lens really until this weekend when I started talking to people. His knee is a far bigger issue than people know that it is. Far bigger issue than people think. That's why if it was me and I was advising L'Jarius Sneed, if he came to me and was like, what should I do? Take the money. It might not be all you want, but take the money. And there have been really strong offers on the table for L'Jarius Sneed that he has turned down in his desire to be the highest paid corner in the National Football League. I know he hasn't missed a significant amount of time with the knee injury. His knees are in worse shape than you think they are. They'd be like, oh, no, it's not that bad. It's bad.
Okay. I have a hard time believing the Chiefs want people to know that, right? Because here I am. Again, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the Titans. L'Jarius Sneed's probably going to cost you about $19 million a season, maybe a little bit more than that. You're probably going to have to give him a 3-year contract, a 4-year contract, but it's really going to be about a 2 guaranteed, 2+ guaranteed. I got to give up a pick, and the guy's got horrendous knees. Now, I hate doing this thing where, people trying to guess what somebody else thinks, especially somebody that's not alive anymore. But, Ian, if Floyd had caught wind that L'Jarius Sneed's knees were that bad, do you think there's any chance he'd execute a trade for him and give him a contract?
It'd probably be unlikely.
I mean, just, again, if he had heard what Carrington Harrison just said there, he would have made L'Jarius Sneed go through every test in the book.
Yeah.
Before he'd even consider. And that's coming from a guy he doesn't even know. It's like if he just heard this report that those knees are that bad, where, it's not that big of a deal. No, it is that big of a deal. If he heard that and L'Jarius Sneed's agent called up, he'd say, well, what's this I'm hearing about the knee? So I'm trying to piece together where all this is coming from, right? Now, I'm going to assume that if TD says the Titans are not interested in L'Jarius Sneed, then the Titans are not interested in L'Jarius Sneed. Just like I assumed when TD told us last offseason that the Titans were waiting on DeAndre Hopkins and they were waiting for DeAndre to pick them over New England and they weren't worried that New England was going to top their offer. I knew he was hearing that from somebody. I'm going to say this is probably the same thing. So I don't think the Titans are in on Sneed. But when it comes to the idea that this has nothing to do with the Chiefs and that the Chiefs already have a trade worked out, but Sneed wants too much money and Sneed should take the deal like Carrington says they should. Sneed should take the deal because his knees are so bad. I think that's Kansas City's way of trying to float out there to Sneed's camp. Dude, you need to take this deal that's on the table for you right now. They're not going to extend L'Jarius Sneed. And I know it's come out that they're fine with him playing on the tag, but I don't think they want to pay him $19 million. I think they want the $19 million to keep themselves. And I think there are two instances here where I look at that franchise tag and I look at two teams that have players they don't want, but they don't want to give those players away for free. And that's Sneed and T. Higgins. I don't think Cincinnati wants T. Higgins. I think Cincinnati wants a draft choice in exchange for T. Higgins so that they can try to draft the next T. Higgins. The problem is that nobody wants to give Cincinnati the draft choice for the next T. Higgins so that they can get T. Higgins and sign T. Higgins. So now Cincinnati might be stuck with T. Higgins on their hands. And it sounds like this is the same way. L'Jarius Sneed and T. Higgins basically have no trade clauses because any team that tries to acquire them will want to sign them to a contract extension. And if they don't want to sign a contract extension, it doesn't matter. So when I hear Carrington Harrison say, hey, the Chiefs aren't the problem here. They've got the compensation worked out. It is Sneed wanting too much money. And that Sneed's knees are really bad, so Sneed should take the money. I think that is Kansas City trying to get rid of Sneed. But I don't know if that means that they've got a team and a deal and compensation worked out. And if they do, who is it? But if it's not a second-round pick, it can't be you. Because you don't have that kind of pick. You don't have the third-round pick. So I don't know what to make of it. And again, if TD says that the Titans aren't in on Sneed, I'll believe the Titans aren't in on Sneed, especially knowing that they're bringing in Tre'Davious White. 615-737-1025, more of your phones. Plus, I have a Preds thought Tonight is a big game against a horrendous opponent, and it is a big game for one reason. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game.
The importance of veterans and showing how to play the game in leadership ways. What has that meant to this season so far, especially this last stretch?
I think it's imperative, and I think it's a little bit of a lost art in our game. I think we probably as a whole take for granted how the veteran leadership and what they bring, it's kind of been lost. And I think there's all kinds of reasons. I don't want to get into too deep, but if you look at the salary cap and all these, the cheaper younger players come in, you lose your veterans, and your veterans kind of, keep you out of, they basically keep you afloat through hard times. They teach the young kids what it's like to be a pro. And when you got great veteran leadership like we have, I think we're starting to see the rewards from it with our young guys, with our whole group. So yeah, it's a lost art, and we forget about it. And our group is a really good reminder.
That was Andrew Burnett. So tonight is a big game for the Predators. I will never lie to you, and I will never tell you that a game is not a big game if I don't think it's a big game. And they are playing a horrific team in San Jose. If the Predators win today, here's why this is a big game. Because if the Predators win today, they have a 97.9% chance of making the playoffs. If it's in regulation, it's 97.8% if they do it in overtime. Basically, they have a 98% chance of making the playoffs if they win tonight. That's what makes this a big game, because it's against a terrible team, and you're red hot coming off of another road trip, and you've got what is a real measuring stick game coming on Thursday against Florida. You need these 2 points. You might not get the 2 points on Thursday against Florida. Let's not kid ourselves. And Thursday's a big game, not because of what it means for the standings, but it's a big game because it is a legitimate, you are going toe-to-toe with a cup competitor on their ice. Saturday, playoff team taking on Detroit. So those aren't guaranteed gimme points. These are gimme points tonight against San Jose, and you need to have them. So this is a big one tonight. Now, there's a couple of things I've been thinking about when it comes to the Predators that I'm worried about. The first thing is the Predators are starting to get injured. First it was Fabro. Now, I could live with Fabro being hurt, no disrespect, but I could live with Fabro being hurt because it's like, fine, just call up Stastny from Milwaukee and you'll be good there. And then, after that happened, Stastny got hurt. Well, I don't like that, but okay, just go ahead and put Tyson Barrie in, and so now you're... And then, apparently, Jeremy Lauzon got hurt. Ian, do we know what happened to Lauzon?
It just said lower body.
And it's week to week?
Correct.
So...
I don't remember anything happening in the game. It was late on Saturday, and I was kind of half asleep in the third period. But
so lower body week to week, and we don't know what it is.
That's correct.
Now, I will ask Barry Trotz about it at 5 o'clock today, and we'll see what Barry has to say. But it does kind of worry me a little bit because I remember the 2018 season when the Predators were red hot right around this time of the year, and Calle Jarnkrok got cheap shotted by Winnipeg. And I remember when they lost Calle Jarnkrok, and I was like, that is a big loss. And Lauzon and what he is for this team, that is a big loss. But one thing I just want to make everybody completely clear on. When it came to buying and selling and, the Preds going on a heater and everything else, the anti-worry about this season crowd, I want picks in the future, I want more prospects, tear. What that crew argued was, it doesn't do you any good to sneak into the playoffs and then to get bounced in the first round. The difference is, again, if they win tonight, a month before the end of the season is over, they will be kicking the door in on the playoffs. They won't be sneaking in. They will be as deserving of a playoff spot as anybody else. And while I don't think the Predators would be favored in any potential first-round matchup, whether it's Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, or Vancouver, the 4 teams that they could play, while I don't think that they would be favored in any of these, the reality is they can win every single one of them. Even Vancouver, which I don't necessarily like. So tonight, to me, is a big game. Now, I'm worried about the Lauzon injury. Andrew says, Jared, the more I watch this Predators team, the more I see shades of the 2017 Cup Run roster. Why do I get the feeling that the Predators are going to get a random overtime game-winning goal from Jankowski to knock him into the second round? Curious to hear your thoughts on how likely the Preds' postseason success would be. Well, let's not forget that in 2017, I guaranteed that they would lose the first round in 5 games to Chicago and they swept them. So what the hell do I know? Now, I did pick Winnipeg in 2018, and people were mad. And I was right about that. I think this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but it's really not. I think the Preds' chances of winning a playoff series, knowing that it's going to be one of 4, Colorado, Colorado, Vancouver, Winnipeg, or Dallas. I think it's probably 50-50 because if they were, and this is me, not what the odds are going to say, not what everybody else is going to pick. If the Predators got matched up with Winnipeg, I would pick the Predators to win that series. I don't think Winnipeg has the firepower the Predators have. If the Predators got matched up with Dallas, I think I would pick the Predators to win that series. Just because Dallas is solid across the board. They've got good goaltending. They can score. They've got depth throughout their lineup. They've got good defense led by Heiskanen. They made the trade for Tanev. But I'm just not sold on Dallas as a high-end kick-your-ass kind of team. I do think Vancouver and Colorado have that, especially up front. Pettersson, McKinnon, so I would pick Colorado or Vancouver to knock off the Predators, and I would probably pick the Predators to beat Winnipeg or Dallas. I think the team I want to see, the more I think about it, the team I want to see in the playoffs is probably Dallas. But again, there is a difference, in my opinion, between what happened in 21 and 22, where the Predators got into the playoffs and then just got slaughtered. Now, they didn't get slaughtered by Carolina, but they were never going to win that series. They got slaughtered by Colorado in 22. There is a difference between that and what is happening right now. What is happening right now, to me, is what happened in 2015, 16, 17, and 18. In 2015, they played Chicago, and they blew a bunch of 3-goal leads in that series, and they ended up losing in 6 games. But that Chicago team went on to win the Cup. So they were competitive with the Cup champion, even though they lost in the first round. 17, they got to the Cup final. 18, they got to the second round. And in 19, they lost in that first round, but they went into that as a legitimate competitor. They are back to where those teams were. And so that's why, again, if you were one of those people that was like, who cares about this season? Right, we didn't think going into the season we would care, but now we do. Because I think this team can compete with all of those teams. It doesn't mean they're going to beat them, but I think they could. But I am worried about the injuries. And again, Barry Trotz will join us at 4 o'clock. So, the Titans are picking 7th. There's only one guy I really, really want. There's one guy I want you all know. It's the same guy you all want. Involves the Titans and what may unfold come draft night. We'll do that next. Right here, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena tonight. The Predators take on the San Jose Sharks, 7 o'clock right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Barry Trotz at 5 o'clock in 1 hour. So there was a report that came out today that I was surprised by, but I'm not shocked by. And that is from Jordan Schultz, who reports that the Giants are going to be flying to Ann Arbor to work out quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Now, the reason that they do that is because they've got to go there. They've got to go there in order to work him out. They can bring him in to them, but they can't work him out at their facility. They have to go see him. Schultz says that, according to sources, quarterback J.J. McCarthy visited the Giants last week, which included dinner with the front office and a tour of the facility. The Commanders are flying out to Ann Arbor to have dinner Thursday night with McCarthy the night before his pro day, according to multiple sources. That doesn't mean anything to me. That's just them doing their due diligence. The Giants thing matters. And I will tell you why. Because right now, the Titans' biggest need is left tackle. And you know it, and so do I. There is a one left tackle in this draft who checks every box, and it is Joe Alt. Joe Alt is 6'9". He has the size. Joe Alt had an incredible 3-cone drill. He's got the agility. Joe Alt's dad played in the NFL. He has the bloodlines. Joe Alt played at a high level at Notre Dame. He comes from a program and played against high-end competition. Joe Alt is the prototypical definition of a great left tackle prospect. And in almost every other draft, that guy doesn't get to 7. You know who went number 2 overall in the same draft that featured Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Larry Fitzgerald, Sean Taylor? A left tackle out of Iowa by the name of Robert Gallery. Now, I don't know why Robert Gallery didn't work out, but that shows you that, again, if you are a left tackle prospect and you check all the boxes, you normally don't last until the 7th pick. But because the first 3 teams, Chicago, especially now that they've traded Justin Fields, Chicago, Washington, and New England all need quarterbacks. So quarterbacks are probably going to go off the board. Then Arizona at 4, kind of a wild card. The Chargers at 5 last week gave away their only receiver. They have to go wide receiver. And then the Giants. And the Giants are the ultimate wild card because the Giants can do anything. The Giants could take Joe Alt because they could kick their right tackle, Evan Neal, into right guard. They're not going to move their left tackle, Andrew Thomas. He's a franchise left tackle. But they could kick in their right guard. They're probably not going to do that, but they could. They could go wide receiver. If one of their receivers that they like is there, they need a receiver. But they could also go quarterback. As we've heard, they don't like Daniel Jones anymore. As Rich Eisen said after he got back from the combine, the one thing that he kept hearing over and over again was the term buyer's remorse for the Giants and that Daniel Jones contract. So when I hear that the Giants are interested, or at least showing interest in J.J. McCarthy, I get excited. It's the same reason I told you guys before the combine that I was rooting for J.J. McCarthy. I said, go J.J. Because the top 3 quarterbacks are going off the board 1, 2, 3. But the 4th quarterback is McCarthy. And I think the reason the Giants are doing this is to drum up interest. Oh, the Giants, they might take McCarthy, so we need to trade up to 6 so that we can get him, or we need to trade ahead of 6 or we can, and that takes away a team that could take your left tackle. So I don't know if the Giants are really interested in drafting McCarthy, but I think they'd love for Minnesota, Denver, the Raiders to think that they are to try and force a trade. And I would too. Because there are 2 things to keep in mind on the J.J. McCarthy front. Number 1, him going ahead of the Titans would be great because it takes a spot away from a team that could possibly take Joe Alt away from you. For instance, if we know the 3 quarterbacks are going ahead of Alt, and we know Marvin Harrison is going ahead of Alt, that's 4. That means there are now only 2 spots between you and the tackle. And if McCarthy goes, say, to the Giants, or the Giants trade with Minnesota, or the Giants trade with Denver, or the Giants trade with one of these teams to be able to get McCarthy, now there's only one more guy, one more spot that can steal your tackle from you. And it's great if it's the Giants or the Chargers, because those are the 2 spots where it seems like Alt would go, and you don't want Alt to go there. And I think the second reason why this is great news about the love of J.J. McCarthy and the J.J. McCarthy sweepstakes are because it is real. And as Michael Lombardi pointed out on the Pat McAfee show, Minnesota doesn't exactly know what they want yet. They just know they want something.
I think Minnesota's still in the collected data point where they're trying to go through all these quarterbacks and decide, which one do we want, where do we need to go to get them, and how this is all going to work out. And where we see this thing, not where the mock drafts see it happening.
Okay. Basically, Minnesota's trying to figure out, all right, which of these quarterbacks do we really like, and then where do we have to go get him? And the chances are, there is a chance that might be McCarthy. And that might mean getting to 7. Because, as I said to start the show today, I want Alt. If Alt's there at 7, I'm taking him. I'm taking him, and I don't, TD told me today that the Titans would take Marvin Harrison Jr. over Alt. I wouldn't. I would take Joe Alt. If Joe Alt's there, I'm taking him. But if Alt's gone, then that means that J.J. McCarthy might still be on the board. And if J.J. McCarthy's on the board and Minnesota's done their homework and Minnesota figures we have to get to 7 in order to take the quarterback, I would feel very comfortable about being able to trade back into 11, picking up picks, and getting Olu Fashanu because while I can't get Alt, I still have to have a left tackle. And I can still get Fashanu or Mims or one of the right tackles, and it would be a consolation prize, but maybe even in Minnesota's case, I can pick up a second first. Depends on who else wants to jump into that mix. So the more hype for J.J. McCarthy, the better. This is good news. And I know so many of you are skeptical about the idea that anybody would want J.J. McCarthy. I'm skeptical of the idea that J.J. McCarthy is going to fly off the board. But the more I think about it, the more I keep comparing him to Will Levis. And the more I keep thinking, the NFL told us they didn't like Levis last year because they didn't draft him. And that includes you. So even though he's got the size, the athleticism, the massive cannon of an arm, they didn't like the fact that he didn't play better at Kentucky. They didn't like the fact that he got hurt at Kentucky. They didn't like the attitude and the mayonnaise and the coffee and everything else. And they didn't draft him. McCarthy is the opposite of that. McCarthy can't throw a deep out. But McCarthy won a bunch in college. McCarthy's a leader. And he can play for the great Jim Harbaugh. So he must be a great quarterback. So I think that this is real. And again, I keep saying it. Go JJ. The more JJ hype, the better. Because it either means you're going to get Joe Alt, or it means there's a legitimate chance that you could get a haul of picks in exchange for the pick that would be J.J. McCarthy. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Now, here's another question for you. If Mel Kiper's mock draft is what ends up happening, which most likely it will not, but let's just say this is, the Titans could find themselves in a very precarious position. We'll get to that next, and then your phone. Stillman and Company, live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I think Joe Alt is, if he's there, he's the pick above everyone else. And I'm going to also double down on this. I don't believe there's a receiver outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. that the Titans feel, and I'm going to strongly say this, that I don't believe there's a receiver outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. that the Titans feel is a better prospect than Joe Alt.
There you go. That was TD on our show saying, hey, I don't think the Titans think that Malik Neighbors is a better prospect than Alt. I don't think the Titans think Rome Odunze is a better prospect than Joe Alt. And I get that. Now, TD did tell me that the Titans would take Marvin Harrison Jr. if he's available at 7, even if Jesus is also on the board. So clearly they love Marvin Harrison, but they probably won't draft him. So Mel Kiper's mock draft is out at ESPN.com. And in it, Mel's got Caleb Williams going number 1, Jaden Daniels going number 2 to Washington, Drake May going number 3 to New England. I don't have a problem with that. Marvin Harrison Jr. goes at 4 to Arizona, which it sounds to me like Arizona's trying to trade out of that pick, but wouldn't be surprised there. Malik Neighbors at 5 to the Chargers. Remember, the Chargers have to go with a wide receiver. And Rome Odunze at 6 to the Giants, which puts the Titans on the board at 7 with Joe Alt available. And in Mel's case, they do draft Joe Alt. Now, we know Minnesota is lurking in the weeds. They are interested in J.J. McCarthy. I don't think, and I kept hearing when Minnesota made that trade on Friday, I kept hearing all this chatter about, oh, they're going to try to go get Drake May. I'm like, you need 3 first-round picks to be able to get up to 3 to take Drake May. And New England still has to get a quarterback out of that, so I'm not sure how comfortable I would feel about that. But let's say that Minnesota calls you. Ian, do we know where Minnesota's second pick is, the one they acquired from Houston? Is that 24? 23. Okay. So if Minnesota called me and they offered 11 and 23. Now the trade chart says in order to move from 11 to 7, you'd have to give up a high third-round pick. Sorry, I am not giving up Joe Alt for a high third-round pick. Sorry about it, but you got to do better than that. Again, I got Joe Alt on the board. Now, this is a different discussion if it's Rome Odunze. But we're talking about Joe Alt. Mel Kiper's mock draft. Tennessee's on the clock at 7. Minnesota calls and says, we'll give you 11 and we'll give you 23 in exchange for the right to draft J.J. McCarthy, and you move to 7, where at that point, I think it's pretty obvious that Fashanu could be available at 11 and probably should be available at 11, or Mims will be available, or one of these right tackles will be available. In Mel's mock, Dallas Turner goes at 8, Jared Verse goes at 9, and Brock Bowers goes at 10. So Fashanu would be available at Minnesota's pick at 11. Fuaga would be available at 11. The kid out of Washington would be available at 11. The kid out of Georgia would be available at 11. I'd still turn it down to take Joe Alt. And I'll tell you why. I go back to what Thomas Dimitrov said, the old general manager of the Falcons, who's now CEO of the analytics company Sumer Sports. When he said that Joe Alt is a pillar player, not he's a good piece of a core, or he's this or he's that. No. He is a pillar player that when you're building your franchise, think about the Cowboys of the 90s, right? Aikman, Emmett, Michael Irvin, Flozell Adams, Darren Woodson, those are pillar players. That's what he's saying Joe Alt is. And so I don't think I'd give up on a pillar player, even though I'm getting the second first-round pick, which could be huge. I don't think I'd do it. Now, let's say Alt's off the board. Let's say Harbaugh takes him at 5, which I don't think, given that they don't have any receivers. Let's say the Giants take him and they kick Evan Neal inside. So now Rome Odunze is available at 7, and Minnesota calls me. I'll make that trade. I'll give you that for 11 because I probably won't get a Dunze at 11, but there'll still be great receivers to be had, and I'm getting the second first-round pick. So I would probably do it for Neighbors. And I wouldn't probably do it for Neighbors. I'd do it for Neighbors. But I don't think I'd do it for Alt. That's how much of a high-end prospect I think Joe Alt is and how big of a need Joe Alt is for this football team. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, the Titans thought Jake Locker was the quarterback of the future. How did that turn out? Will Levis hasn't won or done anything, but they keep saying he's the future quarterback. Well, neither is Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. Neither is Anthony Richardson, who played 5 games. But these guys are the quarterback until they prove that they're not. I was talking to a teacher the other day, somebody who works with kids that struggle reading, like I did when I was a kid. I'm dyslexic, and I had a hard time reading when I was a kid, and I was doing a lot of sight reading. So he's talking to this teacher, and I was talking, she was talking about what it's like to work with children that are learning how to read and how it's a lot like, again, looking at this quarterback. Because I know where Will Levis is right now, and I know where Will Levis has to get in order to be a great quarterback, in order to be a franchise quarterback for this team. But I have no idea if he'll be able to do it. And neither do they, by the way. They might have a strong feeling that Levis could do it, but they don't know. That's why you sign Calvin Ridley and draft Joe Alt, is to give him the opportunity to be able to do these things for you so that maybe you can. But there's no way to know. So, when you say, like, one thing I don't like is I don't like people that say Levis stinks, and I don't like people that say, we've got our franchise quarterback, Jared. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa. I got friends that thought going into the draft that Levis wasn't going to be very good. And they still think Levis isn't good. They're like, oh, I never liked Levis. Well, Levis did just lead a 2-touchdown comeback on the road at Miami on Monday Night Football in the span of 45 seconds. That's pretty impressive. Levis has shown that he's got the ability to play quarterback in this league. Now, will he be a great quarterback? I don't know. But my own opinion of Levis going into all of this is not going to determine what is reality, which is right now, it's just, we just don't know. Josh says, Jared, would you consider Joe Alt like Zach Martin with the Cowboys as far as being a pillar? No, I would not. Zach Martin is a guard. Guards are not pillars. Let me say this right now. If Joe Alt was a guard and Minnesota called, they wouldn't even have to give me their second first-round pick. I'd do it for a third-round pick. The chart says a third-round pick. If he's a guard and you're trying to trade up to that spot, go ahead. Give me the extra third-round pick back. But I don't value tackles like that. A pillar player is, like Derrick Henry is a pillar player. That's what we're talking about here. Trevor joins us next, and I have the question for Trevor. Is it really this simple that Joe Alt's just going to be there for the Titans to take him, and the Titans just can't? Or is it going to be more complicated than that? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company live at Bridgestone Arena. So in both the mock drafts that came out today, Mel Kiper Jr. at ESPN and Daniel Jeremiah, the lead draft analyst for NFL Network at NFL.com, they both have Joe Alt available with the 7th overall pick. Mel goes Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Joe Alt at 7. Daniel Jeremiah goes Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy to Minnesota in a trade with Arizona, Marvin Harrison to the Jets in a trade with the Chargers, Malik Neighbors at 6 to the Giants, and Joe Alt to the Titans at 7. Now, Joe Alt has the size of a franchise left tackle. He has the 3-cone of a franchise left tackle. He has the tape of a franchise left tackle. He played at a high-end program against high-end competition. He has the bloodlines of a left tackle. His dad played in the NFL. I just have a hard time believing that at the second or third most important position, that the dream left tackle, the perfect prospect, is just going to be sitting there for the Titans. Trevor Maddox joins us now from ESPN, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, do you really think, is Joe Alt as good of a prospect as I just said, and is there any chance that Kiper and DJ are right, and that great left tackle prospect might actually be there with the 7th pick?
He is that good of a prospect. He does not have a perfect profile. When you watch him on tape, you can find a few things to nitpick at the guy. But from a standpoint of being the best offensive lineman and most NFL ready to start on day one in this entire draft, I think he's the guy. Although some people have Alabama right tackle J.C. Latham ranked higher, I think Latham has more potential to get in trouble at the NFL level, at least early, than Alt does. As far as him falling down to 7, I think it's possible because you're going to have 3 quarterbacks taken ahead of him. You may have the 4th one in McCarthy, although to me, McCarthy, that's a leap of faith or a leap of clairvoyance, I think, to take him that high. But certainly 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks. Who knows what people might do with Penix. And then you've got 3 elite receivers, touchdown scorers, that teams that feel like they're pretty good at left tackle might want to go with. And so it's not just a matter of he's that great of a foundational piece at left tackle. It's also what do you need and who else is available. And that's why the more quarterbacks get taken above number 7 where the Titans are, the better for the Titans.
Trevor, what are the things that on tape when you nitpick Alt that you don't like? What are the kind of the negatives here on this kid?
Well, he's tall, and he compensates by bending a lot. In other words, he'll bend at the waist, and that gets him in trouble sometimes. It's hard for him to get leverage. He's a very good run blocker, but he's not one of those devastating guys that explodes into you with leverage, lift you up, and drive you back just because he's so tall. And so it's not that he's not a great athlete. It's that waist bending is going to get him in trouble in the NFL until he fixes it. Because as long as he is in terms of long arms, long body, stuff like that, that's all good. His ability to move, outstanding. His intelligence in terms of applying technique, it's all great. But if he bends at the waist, then great pass rushers in the NFL will counter him. They'll start with a bull rush, then jerk him forward, right? Or they'll just go straight into a bull rush and stay with it, depending on what he's doing. And so, that is a potential flaw in the NFL that he will have to fix so that he doesn't open the door to players that can throw counter moves on him that in college he just didn't see that much.
Trevor, am I crazy for saying if I'm the Titans and I'm sitting there at 7, and let's say that the hype for McCarthy is as real as it sounds, and I get calls with Alt on the board at 7, Minnesota's got 2 first-round draft choices now. If Minnesota wants to go from 11 to 7 and offer up 23, I would say no if Alt's on the board because I think he's so much better than the other left tackle prospects in this draft. Do you think that's crazy?
I don't think that's crazy. I from a standpoint of if Alt's there, take him, nobody will criticize Rand Carthon and the Titans if they do that. That is a move that is right. If they accept the trade and move on down. Then if Alt turns into an All-Pro and the guy that they take is just a guy, well, then you got a problem, right? And so the safe pick would be to take Alt. At the same time, the only left tackle in this draft that I like in this realm of Alt, I don't like him as much as Alt right now, but it's the kid out of Penn State, Olu Fashanu. Anybody else at left tackle, I think, carries risks, and I would not trust them to be a starter on day one. For example, Amarius Mims, who played right tackle for Georgia, he has only 8 starts because of the quality of their depth chart and then because of his own injuries. But he is a massive man with unbelievable physical traits that I think within a few years would be a very good left tackle in the NFL. But maybe not. And so Fashanu right now is a left tackle, and the things that he needs to get done are things that he can do, I think, rather easily. He's only got like 21 starts, and he is so fluid that you see him do things naturally. And when he does those things naturally that are the right things in terms of his footwork and hand placement and things like that, he is phenomenal. He is phenomenal just at mirroring pass rushers, meaning pass rusher will go one way, then he'll cut back the other way, and Fashanu will just stay in front of him. Then he counters back with a spin move the other direction. Fashanu slides right back in front of him. Very, very good. The problem that he has is that he's still raw when it comes to the finer points of technique. His footwork, for example. Instead of taking a lead step where he'll take a foot and lead with it, a 6-inch step going the direction he wants to go, he'll pick it up and put it down right where it is. And then he'll turn and run. Well, that puts him behind the defender right from the beginning. And in college, you can get away with that. In the NFL, you can't do that. But he doesn't do those kinds of things because he can't do it correctly. He does it because he's just still in a young phase as a puppy where he needs to work on those things. And I think he'll get better at those things very, very quickly. And I think he will be a starter here on day one. He just has a little more work to get up to the polish of Joe Alt.
So you think what separates those two is the current state of their technique?
That's about it, and experience. Fashanu's not quite as tall, not quite as big, but he doesn't bend at the waist quite as much either. And so I think 3 years from now, you're going to see both of those guys in about the same category in terms of their productiveness in the NFL, with whichever teams have them.
Trevor, I have shaken your hand many times in my life, and your hand, just swallows mine whole. And the reason that I ask this is because you were a first-round draft choice in the NFL. Olu Fashanu has small hands, 8.5-inch hands, and I do wonder how much, in your opinion, you dock him because of the hand size.
I don't dock him at all because of hand size. Now, if watching him play, he doesn't have strong hands, he doesn't have powerful hands, then I would dock him, because so much of pass blocking and run blocking is getting your hands on a guy and then grabbing, getting having his hands on you, and then you hand fighting and getting those hands off of you and replacing your hands on him. So much of this is hand strength. It's just critical. I remember when I first came out as an NFL broadcaster, and I was doing a game for the Falcons, and I went out to Atlanta a bit early, and one of their star pass rushers was in the weight room, and he had 4 45-pound plates that he was holding up with just his fingers in his hands. He took them so that the smooth edge was outside, and he put them together like an Oreo. So each hand didn't have anything to grip except the smooth side of that 45-pound plate, 90 pounds each side. And he would stand there and just hold those till he couldn't hold them anymore. And I tell you what, you watch him on tape, an offensive lineman gets his hands on him, and he takes those powerful hands, grabs the offensive lineman's wrist, and rips the blocker's hands off of him. That kind of a thing. But that, to me, is not hand size as much as hand strength. Fashanu has arms that are plenty long enough, and that's important. His arms are 34 inches or so. And keep in mind that one of the top right tackles in this draft, kid out of Oregon State, Taliesin Fuanga, he's 6'6", but his arms are an inch shorter than Fashanu's. So hands small, but on tape you wouldn't know it because it doesn't appear on tape that way. Arms plenty long enough to play the position for Fashanu, and so that's what I'd be more looking at.
Do you think that, okay, so then I'll ask you this question because, again, I said if Minnesota called me and Alt's on the board, I'm taking him at 7. I don't care if they offer that second first-round pick. But if I move to 11, there's a pretty good chance that I can get Fashanu and then I get another player at the same time. Is it worth the other player to get to drop down to Fashanu, or is Alt that good?
Well, it depends on where they're drafting in that spot. I would be ecstatic with Alt, very, very happy with Fashanu. And so it would depend on who that other guy is. I think that moving down, they have so many needs that offensive line is very deep, and that includes center and guard. Now, they got in Lloyd Cushenberry from free agency to play center. I get that. But there are centers you can just move right over to guard. And there's guys like that in this draft that they could then pick up and create a depth piece that could eventually develop into a starter or at least compete as a starter. There's 9 wide receivers in this draft that ran 4.39 or faster. In other words, in the 4.2s or 4.3s, there are 9 of them. And there are other guys that ran in the 4.4s that are fantastic as well. I think kid out of Washington, Roma Dunze, I think he ran like a 4.41. So he's not even included in that group that ran sub 4.4, right? Well, if they were to drop back to 11, the Titans, then could they take an offensive lineman like Alt? If Fashanu's there, I'm happy with that, and I would do that. You don't know if he's going to be there at the time of the trade. But if they decide to do that anyway, they could still get an offensive lineman who would be a solid 10-year right tackle at least, and then maybe add one of those fast receivers instead of just having one guy to play left tackle. Now they still got to figure out what to do at left tackle, but there's so many holes that, you fill it with as much talent as you can get.
Trevor Maddich is with us, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. So how much is this J.J. McCarthy hype real? We'll get into that with Trevor next, and how that affects the Titans. Let's talk about Window Nation. March is a critical time to check your home's windows. I checked my windows. I had Window Nation come out to my home for the free in-home estimate, and they said, hey, your windows are good. And I was really, really happy because when that process happened, I said, they'll be honest with you. That I'm not going to send somebody to your home who's just looking to replace your windows. I'm sending somebody to your home who's going to tell you what's best for you. And that's the most important thing. And if you've got the cracky or leaky windows that won't stay open or won't close, then it's time to call the pros at Window Nation. Right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. It's really important this time of the year when the temperatures are shooting down and all of a sudden it's cold again. You don't want to wake up in the middle of the night freezing because that cold draft comes right into your home. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. Again, that's Window Nation, 866-90-NATION, or visit windownation.com to schedule that free in-home estimate. Stillman and Company, we are joined by ESPN's Trevor Maddich, who's presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and by Houston Clinic Orthopedics when experience matters. So, Trev, the J.J. McCarthy hype, the Giants have hosted J.J. McCarthy for a visit. The Commanders are flying out to Ann Arbor before his pro day to meet with him, and the Minnesota Vikings are scheduling a personal workout for J.J. McCarthy. After seeing Minnesota acquire a second first-round pick on Friday, it feels like the McCarthy hype is real. Do you think it's a good idea for the J.J. McCarthy hype to be real?
No. Listen, I'm not a J.J. McCarthy fan this high. He may turn into a very, very good NFL quarterback, but there are things I don't like about him. First of all, he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. Okay, so what about his accuracy? He's fairly accurate, but not pinpoint with consistency. You see his highlights where he'll thread the needle between two defenders and all that, and you think, whoa, this guy can throw the ball. Well, how accurate. But then you'll see him miss guys or stop guys on moving routes from side to side or throw deep balls without enough air underneath them so he doesn't give the receiver enough of a chance to adjust to it. Really, the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened to J.J. McCarthy both skew the ability to evaluate him. Mm-hmm. The worst thing was 2 years ago because people say that he was so effective because he had the opponent's defensive signals, or at least his coaches did, and so he was able to have an advantage that other quarterbacks didn't. So he didn't read as much as he did just go where the coach told him to go with the ball pre-snap kind of a thing. Remember that Michigan was under NCAA investigation, and they got in trouble, and Harbaugh got in trouble for a member of their staff going to future opponent stadiums and using electronic means. Yeah. Well, just for people that don't know, I mean, taping their signals and then matching those signals on tape to what the signals are on the sideline, et cetera. Right? So a lot of people thought that McCarthy 2 years ago, when he won the Big Ten with them and took them to the playoff, it wasn't really McCarthy doing much because they had an unfair advantage. This year, they won the national championship this past season. But you cannot attribute that to knowing opponent signals. Because going into the season, this whole thing had broken wide open. And opposing coaches knew that Michigan had been scouting their signals, or at least they suspected it, and they had plenty of time to change up their signals and to counter that. And so this year, McCarthy took him to the national championship, and he didn't have that advantage, right? At the same time, the advantage he had was that he had one of the best offensive lines in football again, one of the best backfields in football again, one of the best defenses in football, and he was never really asked to do a whole lot. I don't think he threw a pass in the second half of the Penn State win this year. Now, he might have been banged up, but they were good enough that they could beat Penn State playing for an entire half without throwing a pass. Mm-hmm. And so is McCarthy really that good? What we don't know about him for sure is if everything is all fair when it comes to him having to read a defense, how will he perform and elevate his teammates when he's playing from behind and the running game is not working and his defense is leaky and the clock is running out?
Trevor,
we don't know that because we haven't seen it.
Trevor, I'll ask you this question. You're a GM. Who would you rather have? Will Levis, who didn't have the success in college, didn't win the games in college, but has the bazooka for a right arm, but didn't play with the Joe Moore winning offensive line and didn't have the Blake Corum at running back and thus didn't win a title, or J.J. McCarthy?
I would much rather have Will Levis. Much rather have Will Levis. Will Levis has a much stronger arm. He's got, in my opinion, he's more accurate on a consistent basis than McCarthy. Levis is bigger than McCarthy. Now, Levis had some issues coming out of college as well that were question marks. And in his first year in the NFL, he kind of solved some of those problems. But we'll see going forward now in year two. But at the same time, if you say, who would I rather have, having seen Levis 1 year in the NFL and having seen McCarthy win the national championship last year, I'll take Levis in a heartbeat.
Would you have felt that way last year before Levis played in the NFL?
No,
really?
I wouldn't have. Yeah, and the reason is that Levis had a great year in college 2 years ago, but then his running back, his receivers, offensive lineman went to the NFL. His coach changed, offensive coordinator, and I don't think he elevated his team like I thought he should have, even though there were holes in the team now, and he kept on reverting to bad habits when things started to go poorly. But see, I thought that about Jordan Love as well. Jordan Love just had a fantastic year at quarterback for Green Bay. When he was at Utah State, his second to last year, he had a bunch of NFL guys. They all left for the league. His final year at Utah State, he was terrible. And then early in his career at Green Bay, he was terrible. But this last year, he proved me totally wrong.
Mm-hmm. Trevor Matich is with us. If you were an NFL general manager and you were on the clock, let's say you're Minnesota, Denver, one of these teams that needs a quarterback, and it were between McCarthy and Bo Nix, is there even a discussion there?
No, I take Bo Nix, but I wouldn't take either one of them in the top half of the first round. Bo Nix doesn't have that strong of an arm either, but Bo Nix, he played more than pretty much everybody, so he played more than McCarthy, although McCarthy's got a couple of years of starter in. But I think Bo Nix's intangibles appeal to me more than McCarthy's intangibles. In other words, the way he talks, the way he acts on the sideline, the way he acts after games, the way he's always a team guy and doesn't have to seem like he's being reminded of that by his coach. These are all things that make me feel better, and these are just all a feel. I mean, there are things that NFL players and college players will say in a post-game press conference, for example, that everybody thinks is great, and it'll make my skin crawl. And there are other things that they'll say that people wouldn't even notice, and it'll make me even more impressed with that guy. And I think those things, I like Nix better than McCarthy.
Trevor, great stuff as always. Appreciate you. We will talk soon.
Okay, thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Matich, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. I mean, how about Trevor saying, no, not even close, Levis over McCarthy? I have not studied McCarthy enough to be able to tell you one way or another. I have not been able to tell you that he's a bum or not, but just watching Michigan as much as I'm like, that guy as a top prospect in the NFL, really? But hey, again, go JJ. I hope the Giants fall in love with him and draft him at 6. And thus, don't draft some player that I want the Titans to draft at 7. It's as simple as that. Barry Trotz joins us next. The Predators go for Ian. Would this be a franchise record or would this tie a franchise record if the Predators pick up a point tonight?
I am not sure about that.
I think it would tie a franchise record.
I think that sounds right.
So they go for, 15 straight tonight?
That is correct.
15 straight points tonight. Basically, ever since I hopped on the team plane to St. Louis, this team is unbeatable. They saw me. They knew, wait a minute, we better get our act right. They have. Barry Trotz joins us from the GM meetings in Florida. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena. Tonight, the Preds and Sharks, 7 o'clock, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The Predators are trying to tie a franchise record 15-game point streak tonight. And, Ian, I just thought about something during the break that I'm feeling a little guilty.
Okay.
So I went to high school. One of my best friends, Greg Prince. We played baseball together. We've been great friends for 20 years. He and I went to the Dallas game, the 9-2 spanking. We went to that started this whole point streak. They have not gotten a point since then. He's going to the game with me tonight, and I just realized it. And I think that might be bad luck.
No, we'll be fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Barry Trotz joins us now on the program, presented by Gary Forsacker, Predators general manager. He's live at the GM meetings down in Florida. So, Barry, let's start with this. 14 games in a row with a point. You guys went from, I don't know if we're sellers to I'm not going to trade the goalie to buyers to now you guys cannot lose. You came on the show on Tuesday and you talked about the big boy game that we were going to see against Winnipeg, and you guys took it to Winnipeg. At this point, when you watch this team play, you've coached very good teams in your career. What do you look at this team and say to yourself as far as its ability this season?
Well, I think number one is they've grown to have created an identity, and that identity has a lot of backbone and a lot of substance in their game. And they've been really relentless. I mean, we play fast, we play hard, we stay on pucks, and we don't let people off the hook. And I think that's part of the game that I think Bruno tried to instill from day one, and it's kicking in. And we've got some hard people that are playing very hard.
Barry, I wonder when kind of the moment was for you where you realized whether it was Bruno's system or whether it was, the cohesion of the lineup. When did you realize this thing had clicked?
Well, I think you could see it coming, but for me, it really clicked. It was the home game against Colorado. Mm-hmm. I knew we were buying at that moment. I just saw how we played. I saw with the determination, with the detail, and like I say, the backbone that we play with, being relentless on the puck. I just knew that team was not gonna fold. So we're gonna have our ups and downs during the season, but I think we really galvanized our team, galvanized our identity, and therefore I think we have to get in the playoffs, but I think we're going to be a team that is going to push for a playoff spot now and hopefully stay there.
We had talked a lot about defensemen and the trade market and, wanting to call up a Spencer Stastny, and you had knocked on wood a bunch about the defenseman being healthy, and right now you've got Fabro out, and then Stastny fills his spot. He's out, but the one that got me was Jeremy Lauzon the other night. He's out. You guys call up Delgado. How worried should I be about the Jeremy Lauzon injury, Barry?
I don't think right now, if we were starting playoffs, Jeremy would be able to play, but we want to get him healthy so he can play at the level that we're going to need him to play. He got injured basically on the last play of the game in the last minute against Seattle, just a commitment play where he threw his body and, blocked the shot, and so we're just going to let him heal up a little bit. So it's a great opportunity. Obviously, Spencer Stastny came up, and I thought he played tremendously and then got hurt in that Winnipeg game. I think Mark Delgado has been, we may be a little bit small on the back end right now, for a real, run here. But at the same time, I think we have enough back there, enough character where forwards will have to pick up a little of the slack, helping out around the blue paint, I think, and they'll be able to do that. There's a real good core, so I'm confident we can hold serve for the next little while.
Barry, how glad are you that a trade didn't materialize with Tyson Barrie? Because it feels like on Saturday you guys needed him, and I thought he played really, really well, and clearly you guys are going to need him for this little stretch right here.
Absolutely. Ty was a tough one. I think it was from our standpoint and for the player's standpoint, he was looking to get in a situation where he could be in the lineup on a daily basis, and we just couldn't make that happen at the trade deadline or even before the trade deadline. It's just sometimes the salaries and the salary cap, they just don't match. And so Ty's been a great soldier. He's stayed in shape. He's stayed ready, and now he's got his opportunity. And I'll tell you what, he's got almost 800 games in the National Hockey League. And that's experience that you can't get anywhere else. So we'll take it, and we're sometimes your blessings come in strange forms, and that blessing is that we didn't move Tyson before the trade deadline or at the trade deadline.
I said to you maybe right around the first of the year, maybe mid-January, I said to you, Barry, I'm watching Roman Josi, and I just don't see the same Roman Josi that I'm used to. What's up with that? And you and everybody else said, no, Yosi's playing great. It's fine. It's fine. The Josi I'm watching right now is the Roman Josi that I'm like, wait a minute, he can play like that. What has changed as far as his game? We know he's a great player. He's always been a great player. But what's changed over the last couple of weeks to where his game has taken off into that next level? And when you talk to your fellow GMs and the talk about the Norris Trophy and things like that comes up, how much do you kind of say, hey, have you seen what my defenseman and Roman Josi's been doing?
Well, I don't really brag to the GMs, but I do brag to the media. I think right now he's the best defenseman on the planet. And there's some great names like McCarr and Hughes and people like that. But right now in this stretch, probably since our break or the All-Star break, I don't think there's a better defenseman on the planet. So, Roman is just an absolute superstar in this league. And sometimes you don't get recognized as much being in Nashville as if you were in Toronto or New York or something like that. But honestly, as a hockey person, I would say he's the best defenseman on the planet right now.
What do you think was kind of the change at the All-Star break? Do you think it's his comfort with the new system? Do you think it was maybe getting used to the other guys he was playing with?
No, I just think that right after the All-Star break and then obviously we got off to a slow start after our team break that we had. I just think he got to another level. He goes, you know what? We're way better than this, and he just sort of said, okay, get on my back and let's go. And I think the leadership that we have around Roman and the leadership that he provides, he just took it to another level.
Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Gary Force Acura. Barry, I kind of want to know what you think of Yaroslav Askarov at Milwaukee lately, because he was red hot when the team was on that stretch, and maybe lately has kind of come back down to earth. As you're evaluating him and knowing what you know of goaltenders and all the great goaltenders you've coached, what do you chalk that up to?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of maturity. I think, everything that he knew and everything that was indicated that we were probably going to be sellers. There was a very good chance that he was going to be part of our plans in the last 20 games or so. And obviously we turn into buyers, and sometimes that disappointment of, I'm going up to, Nashville maybe doesn't happen. I think there's a little bit of a letdown. And that's just another thing that a young player has to deal with is, in life, as in the game of hockey, not everything goes as planned. So there might have been some disappointment on, we never had any conversations that he was going to be with us. But I think, there were some indications that we were going to, do something and sell some people off. And there was rumors of, a guy like Kevin Lankinen moving as a good option for some teams. So I think probably in the back of his mind, it was probably that. But at the same time, goalies go through different sort of hot and cold spells, just like shooters do. So it can be all of the above.
Barry, you're at the general manager meetings right now, and I know there's a lot of talk about rule changes that may be happening here. And as far as I'm concerned, or what I've seen, there's no changes in the 3-on-3 overtime. But I do wonder about some of these kind of reviews and the nuances that you guys are working through, and kind of where you stand on some of the potential rule changes that are being discussed at the GM meetings.
Well, I think, there's so many situations that happen, and there's protocols that happen. Situation, for instance, is one of the things that we looked at. There was a game, I think it was the Rangers, that was in New York, and one of their own players late in the game, there was heading to the net, Ranger player heading to the net, and the opposition player, his stick actually clipped his own the player in front of the net, and the Rangers are about to get a penalty. The rules and the protocols, what you can challenge, what you can't. The Rangers end up getting a penalty, and everybody in the rink, I think, could see that there was no penalty on the Rangers. It was just it was what we call friendly fire with your someone on your own team's stick.
Sure.
And there was nothing in place to get it right. There wasn't a mechanism for the referees, because they didn't see it on Jumbotron, but the 20,000 people that did, they were the only 4 guys that didn't see it, and there was no mechanism in place for them to get that call right. So as general managers and as a league, we just wanted to get it right. So we put some mechanisms in, so if that situation comes up again, the Rangers could challenge that, for instance, and get it right. And so we just try to put some mechanisms for these really unique situations that happen once in a, they don't happen often, but when they do, they just seem to happen at the wrong time. And so we want to put some mechanisms so that we can get it right for the fans, get it right for the players, get it right for the teams.
Do you feel like when you're in, because I'm looking through all the rule changes or all the potential rule changes that may be out there, and some of these I think are pretty important. Like you brought up the friendly fire on a high stick and being able to review that. And I'm looking, puck over the glass, and that could be reviewed by a coach's challenge. But then there are some other ones about, moving morning skate times up 15 minutes. Are there some of these that you just quite frankly don't care about, or do you have an opinion on every single one of these potential rule changes?
I think as a general manager, you have an opinion, and sometimes it applies more to you than others. There's a couple, for instance, moving the morning skate times. That's because of some cities have grown based on where teams say do their morning skate, where they stay in terms of hotels. They get caught in traffic jams, and all of a sudden it turns into a 2 or 3 hour ordeal to get back to your hotel, and you're there for an hour, and then you got to get back on the bus and try to fight traffic again. So we just want to put some mechanisms in for certain situations, for certain teams and certain locations, so that there's no competitive advantage for teams. And unfortunately, cities grow, but they don't ask us how they're going to deal with all the extra traffic and stuff like that. So those mechanisms we're trying to put in place for the team, so that the games are good, and they're I'll say there's no advantage. Everything is equal for the teams.
Barry Trotz is with us. Last one for you, presented by Gary Force Acura. And I don't want to overlook tonight's game because, again, according to MoneyPuck.com, if you win tonight in regulation, you have a 97.9% chance of making the playoffs. But after this game does come a stretch of games, starting with, I think, maybe one of the top Cup favorites, if not the top Cup favorite, in Florida on the road on Thursday. Detroit is a playoff team. Vegas is a playoff team next week. How excited do you get knowing that your team right now looks like a playoff team and is going to be able to go and measure themselves on the ice against these high-end playoff teams before you would go into the playoffs?
I think it's really important. I think we're playing playoff hockey right now. That's why I think if we were to start the playoffs, today and we got in, I think we'd be a dangerous team because we are playing playoff hockey. I've been on the other side when I was in Washington and we had won back-to-back President's Trophy. We didn't play a meaningful game for 2 months, and then we headed into the playoffs, and we got through the first round, but we didn't get by the Penguins, and they went on to win the Cup twice in 2 years that we won the President's Trophy. So it's good to play those meaningful playoff-type games to get in. You saw that last year with Florida. I mean, they were out of the playoffs, and I think it was Pittsburgh who was playing, I think, Montreal, who was a little bit down in the standings. and Pittsburgh lost that game, or maybe it was Chicago. And anyways, they didn't get in, and all of a sudden, Florida gets in because of a loss by Pittsburgh and go right to the Cup final. So you just don't know. You want to be playing playoff hockey. That's your best chance to beat those top teams in the first round because those top teams usually have a little breathing room, and they maybe have kicked their game down a little bit. And, having the ability to kick their game way up real quickly, it's difficult sometimes. So when you're playing playoff hockey in those tight games and the meaningful games, you get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's an advantage.
I said last one I lied only because of this. With you at the GM meetings, Barry, have there been GMs? You came on the show a couple weeks ago and said, what do I know? I'm just a rookie general manager. Now that your team has done what they've done, they've turned it around the way they turned it around, do you have other GMs coming up to you at the GM meeting saying, Barry, you got to tell me what the secret is because I've been doing this for 6 years and I haven't been able to accumulate the draft picks, salary cap space, prospects, and win at the same time the way you guys have?
Well, I think they acknowledge that we've done a really good job. They really like our team. They talk about how we've created a culture and a sort of an identity that it's hard to do in today's day and age with the salary cap and with some of the personalities within their individual teams. They just said your 5-man game is exceptional. We're sort of jealous how well you guys are playing. But if I said, just like anything, that can turn in a moment. We've seen all 3 teams this year. We've seen the 5-10 team, the 14-4 team, and we've seen the 5-5 or the 8-8 team through the year. So, I love the way that our focus is really good, and hopefully we can continue with that focus tonight. Tonight, to me, is the hardest game we're going to play. Reason being is we were on a road trip. We had some success. It was a number of days. The guys got home, and you're playing a team that is not going to be in the playoffs. It has nothing to lose. They're going to play hard, and we're missing a couple pieces on the back end and see how we can rally around that fact and get 2 points. Because I know the 2 points tonight are just as valuable as the 2 points in Florida the next game.
Mm-hmm. Barry Trotz, he is the best, presented by Gary Force Acura. Barry, congratulations on the team's success. Good luck tonight, and good luck with the GMs at the GM meetings.
Thank you.
Yep, Barry Trotz joining us on the program. So on the Jeremy Lauzon front, Barry Trotz says that, again, the team says week to week, says it happened at the end of the game on Saturday, but that if the playoffs were today, Lauzon would play, which is music to my ears, which I can't even believe I'm saying because, this is a new Jeremy Lauzon we're seeing out there. But on that front, it does make me feel better, and Mark Delgazzo goes in the lineup tonight. All right, we'll react to that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, including Barry saying tonight's going to be the hardest game to play. We'll do that. Stillman and Company, live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, thanks to Barry Trotz for joining us from the general manager meetings. So is it bad that, like, on some of these things, Ian, that, these general managers are going over? I have no opinion as far as, like, moving morning skate time up and things like that. But
No.
I guess it's, procedural. They got to do what they got to do.
Yeah, that stuff matters to them and the players and the coaches way more than it matters to us and the fans.
So here's my takeaway from Barry Trotz on our program. And if you missed it, he said Jeremy Lazan got injured on the last play of the game against Seattle the other night. But that if the playoffs started today, he'd be okay. They just want to make sure to get him healthy. Here's my big takeaway from Barry Trotz. He's nervous because it's going too good. It's going too good right now for the Predators, where they play hard every night. They play focused every night. They find a way, just the way they've stuck together, the effort, the everything. And I think we all know this, that you really want to be playing that way when it really, 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 really matters. Now, it really matters right now. I mean, when they started doing this, they were on the verge of almost canning the season. So the fact that they have played themselves into position where, again, a win tonight against the Sharks gives them a 97.9% chance of making it to the playoffs, I think that, they had to have it. They did get it. But he's nervous because he knows the team's good. And I'm nervous because I know this team is good. Like, I know that this hockey team is good. And I know that this team can compete with Winnipeg, Colorado, Denver, Vancouver, basically any team in the Western Conference except for Edmonton, I think they can compete with. And I think when they get in the playoffs, they will. That doesn't mean that they can beat them. That doesn't mean that they will beat them. I think they can beat them, and I think he thinks the same thing. But there's still a month between now and the playoffs, and I think that month worries him, and he brought up that those President's trophies that he won in Washington where, they kind of put it on cruise control for the last month and a half because they knew they were in it. I was thinking about this today. The 2018 team that ended up winning the President's Trophy, they played Winnipeg right around this time of the year in 2018. And Calle Yarncroke got cheap-shotted, I believe, by Cogliano. And that he was out for the rest of the regular season with like a separated shoulder or something. And I remember that night, they played Winnipeg here, and that was kind of this big showdown game. And they ran Winnipeg's goalie out in the first period. And after that and the Yarncroke injury, they were playing for the President's Trophy until the very end. But it was kind of like they could kick it up a little bit. And I think it took some fuel out of the fire. And that's what he's worried about. And he's worried about that, and I'm worried about it too. And so I think he loves the way they're playing. I think he loves the effort. I think he loves the contributions from across all four lines, all the defense pairings, the great goaltending they're getting, the way Roman Josi is playing out of his freaking mind right now, the fact that this team seems to find a goal absolutely when they got to have it, like they did at the end of the Minnesota game in regulation. Like, he's loving all of it. But he's nervous. That's not going to last forever. And I feel that. But I'd much rather be in this position where I'm nervous about something going wrong than I am upset about the fact that nothing's going right. To your phone, 615-737-1025. Dylan says, I love the Trotz interviews every week because he's very open and honest all the time, but I wonder if he should be a little bit more tight-lipped about the state and status of the team. He's won a Stanley Cup, so maybe I'm overthinking this. This comes from Dylan. Let me say this. When it comes to Tyson Barrie, and I think Tyson Barrie's a good example of this. When it comes to Tyson Barrie, it got out on a Saturday that Tyson Barrie wanted to trade. And I want to say this was what, November or December, Ian?
Yeah.
I mean, it was early in the season.
Probably December.
Tyson Barrie wanted to trade, and it came out on a Saturday. And we had Barrie on Tuesday. And I asked Barrie about it. And Barrie was not happy about Tyson Barrie's request being made public. And he said on the show that there are 3 people in the world that knew of that trade request, and he knows that he wasn't the one talking to the press about it. And I think that right then and there, I was worried that, this is going to become a thing, and now people are going to tell Barry, you can't go on the radio and say everything and blah, blah, blah. And what I think's actually happened is the opposite. My guess is it got addressed right then and there, that Barry addressed it with Tyson Barry of like, hey, dude, I'm not happy about the way that this transpired. You know how I feel. I told everybody how I feel. But we want you to be a pro around here. And I said in the interview, I'll do what it takes to find you the right situation. And I was talking to Willie about this earlier today. I have heard from people with the team that Tyson Barry's professionalism has been a big part of this run that they've had, in spite of the fact that until Saturday, he wasn't playing. And Ryan McDonough even referenced that in the interview before the game on TNT, before the Minnesota game a couple weeks ago, about how, Tyson Barry's like making brews or chili or whatever it is, to celebrate all their wins. Well, I can't remember what the hell it is he's making. Max says it's a beer called Chili Ones. I don't know what the hell it is. I don't care. More importantly, I think that Barry's transparency and the fact that Barry lets the fans in and that Barry won't say anything to us that he probably hasn't already said to the players or the coaches or whatever, I think that's a good thing. And, it's easy to have these kind of interviews when they're winning as much as they're winning. It's actually kind of fun. But, I do worry about what's going to happen one day. Again, I don't want to worry about the bad stuff because I'm enjoying the good stuff too much. But I do wonder, if things don't go well and these interviews aren't as friendly as they've been in the past because the team keeps winning. It's easy to have the general manager on every week and ask him about what's going on. When the team doesn't lose, it's fun as hell. But, look, we all got jobs to do, so we'll continue to do those. I'm sorry, are we interrupting personal time over there, Max? We're making phone calls? Oh, I'm just giving you a hard time. Max is over there on his phone. He's like listening to some video over there. And they're like, I'm sorry, should we postpone our radio show so Max can make his phone call? Ian, should we go to break so Max can make his phone call?
Probably, yeah.
615-737. Max's face is bright red. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones next here on Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Twice Daily. Twice Daily is the best. And Twice Daily has all of your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program, like I'm a member of, to unlock special discount savings and enter the sweepstakes and so much more. Try their new wraps, Italian ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and Nashville hot chicken. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or go to Twice Daily, where it's snack time all the time. They've got your favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and the new pretzels. That's Twice Daily. What are you craving?
guys have hit the injury bug a little bit on the back end. It was a challenge navigating that. What have been the reports you got from the guys?
Yeah, Gaz has been great. I mean, we got a good taste of him this year. We're really fortunate that we have a deep defense core down there too, with Stas and Gaz, and you got Willsby coming. We got some players that are been outstanding from Milwaukee. It's going to happen through the course of the year, and to me, that's an opportunity. And it's an opportunity to get a great opportunity and an opportunity to come into our group and help pull the rope here a little bit, dig in, anchor in, and we're going to need you.
That was Andrew Burnett talking about Mark Delgazzo coming into the lineup. Did I get it right that time, Delgazzo?
Guyzo, yeah.
Delgazzo. So Max tells me, during the break, he goes that Delgazzo's name is pronounced Delgazzo. And I said, well, Barry says Delgazzo. He said, no, it's Delgazzo. Now, Max calls the games when Pete's out, so I guess that, Max would know. So I hear that, and I said to Max, I was like, well, you know what? He needs to start playing better, needs to get in there more, and then we'll get it right. But we'll get it right now, Delgazzo. Thank you, Max. So he's in the lineup. Let me say this. That makes me nervous. I mean, I just finally started to get on the Jeremy Lauzon train, and now Jeremy Lauzon's out. That is a kick in the tush. Now, Barry Trotz did come on. The last thing he said when he was on the program today was that tonight's game is going to be the hard game. He basically laid out that tonight's game against San Jose is a huge trap game. And I get it. Robbie Stanley sent me this tweet that I guess that he tweeted out. And Robbie said on tonight's game, the Predators' record in their past 14 games is 12-0-2. The Sharks' record in the past 14 games is 1-11-2. He said, I'm just throwing that out there. The Preds do not need to let this one slip away tonight. Here's the thing about the Predators that I am very focused on tonight. See, the Predators need to win tonight because they need the 2 points, knowing that Florida on Thursday is certainly not a guaranteed 2 points. Detroit on Saturday is not a guaranteed 2 points. And Vegas on Tuesday is not a guaranteed 2 points. You go ahead and get those 2 points. But the thing that the Predators did was, I said to Barry Trotz, before puck drop of the St. Louis game that started all of this, I said to him at the Enterprise Center in St. Louis, I said, this team is about to go on a heater. And I said, because what I've learned with the Predators is that every time you think they're about to zig, they turn around and they zag. And it's been that way for the last 7-8 years. Like since I came back to cover this team in 2015, it's been that way. You start to think, oh, no, this team stinks. They need to be sellers, and they go on and they turn around. Even last year, they waved the white flag on the season, and they had moved off. Barry Trotz was coming in. David Poyle was going out. They moved off all these players. And it was like, all right, guys, this is going to be a tough little road here the rest of it. And that team almost made the freaking playoffs. And so I told them they're about to go on a heater. And they did. But then at the end of that road trip, I got very nervous. They played San Jose on a Saturday, and they played Anaheim on a Sunday. And I'm like, those are trap games. And they survived. Then the next Tuesday, they played Ottawa at home. Ottawa sucks. I'm like, this is a trap game because this is, long road trips finally over. You get back on Monday. You've got that one day with the kids before you turn around and play on Tuesday. And I believe Minnesota was coming in on Thursday. It was a big game. I'm like, that's a trap game. And they kicked their ass. And so all these trap games that have come up, the Predators have shown out. But tonight is absolutely a trap game because Thursday is a big one. I mean, I told Max when we went to break, last segment, the segment before that, I'm like, I can't wait till Thursday's game. It's like Thursday, if you're worried about Thursday, and I'm worried about you're worried about Thursday, the team is, they're going to lose on Tuesday. And I think that's what Barry's a little nervous about is like, hey, this is going to be a tough one tonight. Coming off of the road trip, they got back yesterday. They get one day with the family, and then after the day with the family, it's turn around and play this game before they get on the plane tomorrow to go to Florida. So it's just something to keep in mind. Justin says, Barry Trotz knows what he's doing. I would love to have the Titans act like he does. I know hockey and football are two totally different sports, but would it kill the Titans to be as transparent as Barry Trotz is? I don't know. It is different. Like that Vegas trip, I made a joke. when the team decided not to go to Vegas, to cancel that Vegas trip. And I made a joke in which I said to people, I was like, that's great, but if this were the NBA, half the team would be demanding a trade. And you know that's true. Like if the coach and the general manager said, guys, we're not happy, we're not going to let you go to Vegas for a couple of extra days to party, those NBA players would be calling their agent saying, get me the hell out of here or fire that coach. You know, that's something that like LeBron or Giannis would go to the owner and say, fire the coach. So they're different sports. And football's a different sport too. I don't know. Ian, do you think that somebody could be as honest as Barry Trotz is in football?
Good question. Probably, but they don't.
So some people have said that, Barry, the way Barry comes on the show every week, Floyd used to do that back in the day where every Friday he'd go on with George Plaster for an hour. And he'd sit there and do the show. Wherever it was, he'd go off and do it. And people talk about how, wow, he would do that every Friday. He'd sit there, take calls, he'd whatever. And I do wonder, because some people have said that, Barry Trotz has a little bit of Floyd in him. I don't want to go there because I never covered Floyd and obviously have a certain level of respect for Floyd that even somebody like Barry Trotz, as much as I love Barry Trotz, have a hard time getting from me just because I didn't have the relationship with Barry Trotz that I had with the old man. But, I think the old man was pretty honest when he was GM. But deep down inside, I know he lied a lot too. So, and I think the one thing I'll say about Barry Trotz is this. He knows what he's doing in terms of playing the game. Like when he came on the show before the trade deadline and he said that if he couldn't get a deal done with Tommy Novak, he was going to trade him. That wasn't for us, okay? That was a threat. Now, would he have made good on the threat if they didn't get a deal done? I don't know. But that was him knowing what he was doing. And I don't know if he was telling the truth or lying to me or what. One texter into the text line says, Jared, this team reminds me so much of the 2017 team. This team is as determined as that team was. That team never was as hot as this team. It's easy to play revisionist history now and say, that 2017 team, the way that they played like this in the playoffs. Once they got that Chicago win, that Game 3 win against Chicago that kind of sealed that series, that team started to play like this team. But that team never played like this in the regular season. I do not have 2017 vibes from this team. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, it's different. Predators game day is next. Barry Trotz says it is going to be the hardest one. We'll do that. Stillman and Company live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with my realtor. That's TJ Anderson. The San Jose Sharks stink. They come in tonight at 16-44-7, good for 39 points. The Predators, 39-25-4, that's good for 82 points. According to MoneyPuck.com, if the Predators win today, they will have a 97.9% chance of making it into the playoffs. I'm not saying that today is kind of winning in, but I'm saying today is kind of, I mean, again, talking about 98% chance. It'd have to be an all-time collapse in order for them not to make it. The Predators, as of right now, are 7 points clear of a playoff spot. St. Louis has 75 points. Predators have 82. Vegas is behind you with that last wild card at 79 points. You're probably not catching up with Winnipeg, Colorado, or Dallas, who are all ahead of you with 91 points. We do go to the coach's take. Here's Andrew Burnett on how relentless the Preds have been playing.
You know, when we were on our game, that was kind of the identity we want. Now we grabbed it. We kind of grabbed the word, and we've been bringing it every night. So I think it's just a good reminder of when you lose your game, when things aren't going well, then I think if we can remember and remind ourselves what that means and how do we get back to it as soon as possible. And I think the word and the work they put into it defines that.
So I would tell you, watching this team, it feels relentless. Now, there are two streaks at play. The Predators tie a franchise record tonight if they get a point with a point in 15 consecutive games. And apparently, according to these beautifully colored notes from our friend Katie, the Predators own a 12-game point streak, 11-0-1 against San Jose that began March 16th of 2010. Is that real? This team has not lost to San Jose in regulation in 14 years. Max says that he thinks the game's right. Okay. I mean, that's wild and crazy to me. So we will see if the Predators can avoid the trap tonight against San Jose and they can get those points and get themselves a 97.9% chance of making it to the playoffs. Max has you with the pregame show. That's next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow, too.